Chapter 90. To come back from death's door. 3. Qi Ning knew that Lu Ruohua had been with Su Luo before. After a little bit of questioning, she discovered that Su Luo had indeed been lucky enough to survive. She had even escaped from that tornado. Qi Ning gave her a sly and cold smile. It looks like their moment to earn some merit from the young princess was finally here. As a result of the directions provided by Lu Ruohua, Qi Ning was able to retrace the path that Su Luo had used when fleeing for her life. She was determined to hunt this Su Luo down. Su Luo still didn't know that Qi Ning had brought people to chase after her with the intent to kill. Right now, she was in the middle of cooking a few stolen magical beasts' eggs over an open fire. During this entire afternoon, she had been constantly running away from those who wanted to kill her. Because of this, she had consumed a huge amount of her stamina. Therefore, she had to fill her stomach first. Besides, in this Sunset Mountain range, who knew when her next meal would be at? Her journey's bitter experiences, after entering Sunset Mountain range, made Su Luo realize that, in this world, strength was the most important thing to have. So she urgently needed to find a peaceful place to start her cultivation practices. Seeing her dual wood and fire elements encircling her body, Su Luo bit off a mouthful of magical beast's egg. Her heart was elated. She planned to find some basic wood, fire element books to practice with after leaving this place. Suddenly, Su Luo's hand that was holding the magical beast egg paused. A feeling of impending crisis assailed her thoughts. She had spent her entire previous life working as an assassin, so naturally Su Luo was most sensitive to this kind of murderous intent. She was absolutely sure she was not wrong about this. This was not the killing intent emitted by a magical beast, but from a person. Su Luo saw the other few eggs still being cooked. Without even having to think, she picked them up and threw them into her space. She immediately headed into the forest and slipped away very quickly. Su Luo ran in a hurry for a full 4 hours. When she finally stopped, she quickly hid behind a sheer cliff. Now the sky had gradually darkened towards night. The moon was casting its hazy shadow. Su Luo slowed down and quieted her breathing. She also slowed down her heartbeat. Her entire person was hidden in darkness, blending in with the cliff within the dark night. Even master martial artists wouldn't be able to distinguish her from the face of the cliff. At that very moment, a maiden seemed to fly over from afar. Her clothes was white like snow, with a simple and neat appearance, a light blue-colored diaphanous outer layer covering her clothing. Her body gave off an exceedingly refined manner. Su Luo recognized her. She was not a stranger but one of the maids standing by the Jade Lake's ferry's side. Su Luo had an excellent memory. As long as she saw them before, even after a few years, she would be able to recognize them at once. This was especially true for someone she met only half a day ago. Su Luo, I know you are over there. Come out, no need to hide. This person was called Chuiyu. Her call was cold and devoid of any mercy. In the darkness of the night, it conjured up quite a horrifying feeling. Su Luo sneered in her mind. If she really knew where Su Luo was, then why was she still looking around in all directions? How could this be considered knowing where she was? Was she underestimating her as a good-for-nothing greenhorn who knows nothing? However, Su Luo thought this was odd. Why had this maid come looking for her? And also, why was she carrying a strong killing intent on her body? Was it because... Su Luo thought of a possibility. That kind of person, clear as ice and clean as jade, too. A woman seemingly not profaned by the worldly dust. Would she actually order her underlings to kill her? Although it was unreasonable, it was also not impossible. Kunan 3 said it best. If you rule out everything that was impossible, then the remaining reason must be the truth, no matter how crazy it sounded. It seemed that the Jade Lake's fairy was also human. She originally thought that she was so temperate, so lofty and unsoiled, so exceedingly refined, and so above the common people. But as it turned out, she was also a woman that would go frantically crazy over a man. Su Luo's heart smiled coldly. She must capture this girl and confirm her own guess, so she can determine who her real enemy was. Su Luo was never a person to sit and wait for death. If others want to kill her, then they must pay with their lives. Su Luo motionlessly hid somewhere below the cliff, waiting for Chuiyu to get closer. Chinese divided our modern 24-hour cycle into 12 shurchen. So 1 shurchen equals 2 hours. Su Luo ran 2 shurchen here. So from now on I'll just calculate the time without mentioning the shurchen. 2. Clear as ice and clean as jade. Idiom. Spotless, irreproachable, incorruptible. 3. Kunan is the Chinese name for Detective Conan from the Japanese anime/manga Maitanti Conan, otherwise known in America as Case Closed. Thank you, readers, for pointing out that Conan or Conan is the middle name of Sir Arthur Ignatius Conan Doyle, author of Sherlock Holmes' original source of this quote and inspiration for the anime/manga. Pretty sure the author was referring to Case Closed. Chapter 91. To come back from death's door. 4. Suddenly, in the darkness of the night, the silvery tip of a dagger shined brightly. Su Luo's body shifted as quick as lightning, and within seconds had already arrived at Cui Yu's back. Su Luo's half-broken dagger was wielded with deadly aim towards Cui Yu's throat. Su Luo's movements were precise and nimble, merciless and bloodthirsty. There wasn't a single wasted motion. Cui Yu proved to be a second-ranked martial artist. She sensed danger approaching and slid to the left while attempting to stab the person behind with her sword. However, she was already a step too late. While Cui Yu was leaning left to avoid the dagger aimed at her throat, Su Luo had already anticipated Cui Yu's actions and had moved the dagger there in advance. Therefore, when Cui Yu leaned to the left, she ran directly into the dagger. A schluck sound lightly echoed and a stream of blood rushed out like spring water. Cui Yu did not die immediately, but the pain caused her to roll around on the ground. The instant kill failed because Su Luo's dagger had lost half of its effectiveness. Half of the dagger had been chewed off by the adorable little dragon previously, therefore it was not sharp enough to kill Cui Yu instantly. Su Luo coldly watched Cui Yu rolling around on the ground in pain and quietly asked, "Why are you trying to kill me? You must die." Cui Yu's facial features were malevolent, her expression twisted, but her chin was still unbending and arrogantly raised. "Just tell me the truth and I'll release you from your suffering. How do you feel about this deal?" Su Luo said with a bargaining tone as she squatted down and gave Cui Yu a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Cui Yu coldly turned her face away, not paying any attention to Su Luo's threats. In Cui Yu's eyes, Su Luo was just an ant. She would never admit that Su Luo was stronger than her. "Very courageous of you." Su Luo pulled out the blood-encrusted, half-broken dagger. Her smile was genial, like a warm breeze. It did not contain even a hint of anger. "As you already know, my dagger is very dull. It can't kill a person in one strike." "Humph." Cui Yu firmly spat out. "Very good. I admire your courageous spirit. I hope you can keep it up as we continue." Su Luo's face held a faint yet sly smile. She smiled with ease while the dagger mercilessly zoomed towards Cui Yu's finger. A finger was forcibly cut off. Cui Yu was in so much pain that her tears and mucus flowed out together. The agony almost made her pass out. Without waiting for Cui Yu to speak, the second finger was quickly severed and went flying off. The third finger, "I'll talk. I'll talk." A trace of startled surprise flashed through Cui Yu's eyes. She did not understand. Even though Cui Yu is a practitioner of martial arts, she would not be able to use such a cruel method. How was Su Luo able to do it so skillfully and with such a gentle and soft smile at that? It was as if what she was slicing off were not fingers, but pieces of bread. This person was simply a monster. You need not be so anxious. I haven't completely chopped them all off yet. Su Luo gestured with her hand, as if to say she still wished to continue cutting off more. Cui Yu reluctantly but loudly said, "It was the young mistress that told us to kill you. For every grievance, someone is responsible. For every debt, there is a debtor. If you have the ability, then go look for the young mistress to seek your revenge." Why would she want to kill me? As expected, it was the Jade Lakes fairy who wanted to kill her. Cui Yu stared at Su Luo as if looking at an idiot. Do you really not understand? Our young mistress from when she was little until now is deeply attached to His Highness Prince Jean. They grew up together and since childhood, their mutual affection was unlike others. In everyone's eyes, the young mistress and Prince Jean was like a pair of jade annulus. As for you, His Highness Prince Jean actually kissed you. Therefore, you cannot be forgiven. Just because he kissed me, thus your Jade Lake's fairy wants to kill me? Su Luo coldly smiled. Her guess was indeed correct. Yes, because His Highness Prince Jean does not allow others to get close to him. The only person who can even touch him is our young mistress. Now, there is a third wheel, and that is you. Therefore, you must die. Chapter 92. To come back from death's door, 5. So it's like that? A thread of frost appeared in Su Luo's eyes, and a barely visible smile rose from the corner of her mouth. What bullshit title? Fairy. More like exceedingly refined cow dung. What being above the common populace's dirty emotions? They were all a bunch of dog shit. Nangong Luyun was so stupid that it made her want to laugh. He always bragged about being highly intelligent, but was unable to see clearly that the woman by his side had the heart of a snake and the methods of a scorpion. What about Nangong Luyun? How is he right now? A hidden meaning passed through Su Luo's huge eyes, which sparkled and were translucent like jade. The corner of her mouth had a faintly mocking expression. His Highness Prince Jean and our young mistress are together. These words were correct, but Cui Yu had not told the whole truth. Su Luo nodded her head. Nangong Luyun, when you saw that the little treehouse had been wiped out, was your heart able to feel guilt and remorse? Being you were unsure of whether I am dead or alive, were you worried? Why was it that the one that was looking for me is not you? So once you have your Jade Lake's fairy, do I no longer matter to you? If I think about it this way, then the vow you previously made to me and all that you said are really laughable. As expected, if ever she depended on a mountain for support, then the mountain would collapse. If she leaned on a person, the person would run away. She could only rely on herself. Su Luo's pair of eyes were like water, but she had an icy cold expression that was intent on hearing the truth. Talk. How many people did your Jade Lake's fairy send out to kill me? Since they were already dispatched, the Jade Lake's fairy wanted to completely eliminate her. It seemed like this time, she really was surrounded by perils. It was extremely dangerous. Su Luo didn't know what was wrong with her. Could it be because her character was lacking? It had only been half a day, yet she had already encountered 3 cases of being chased by groups trying to kill her. She felt as if she should personally visit a temple and burn a stick of incense, pay respect to Buddha, or do anything to try and get rid of this rotten fortune. She simply had the worst luck. However, Cui Yu's faces became unresponsive, and she turned her head away. Don't want to talk? Very good, extremely good. A sinister sneer appeared in Su Luo's eyes. Right now Su Luo's mood was really gloomy, and here was a person not afraid of death, delivering herself for Su Luo to vent on. This was really the only good thing going for her at the moment. Without as much as a hint of hesitation, her dagger directly chopped down. On my hand, Cui Yu could only see that her entire wrist had been cut off with blood pouring out and spraying madly everywhere. She hadn't even finished when Su Luo's dagger chopped down again. Cui Yu's other hand was also severed. Blood similarly madly rushed forth. I'll talk. Cui Yu was in so much pain that she almost died. Her complexion was as pale as paper, and cold sweat was falling down like rain. Actually, you can still wait for a moment. Su Luo's smile was as friendly as a warm breeze. But in Cui Yu's eyes, she was like a demon from Azura's hell, with an expression full of a terrible sinister intent. Apart from me, there are 3 other people. Cui Yu was in so much agony that she could only grasp roughly for air. Her eyes unwaveringly glared at Su Luo, full of fierce, malicious curses. Every one of their strength is stronger than mine, and they definitely will avenge me. Really? Then let's just wait and see. Su Luo stood up, towering above her, and disdainfully looked down at her. Upon the fact that you revealed everything, I'll give you a chance. Finish yourself off. No, Cui Yu desperately shook her head, at the moment when she was really at death's door. She finally become aware that she really will forever depart from this world. Afterwards, there won't be any breaths, won't be able to smell the air, won't be able to open her eyes again. Blue sky, white clouds, she won't be able to see anything anymore. If I was to do it, I'm afraid I won't be able to help but to slice off your flesh piece by piece from your body. Su Luo indifferently looked at her own hands, smilingly said, I have yet to kill a person, don't want to dirty my hands because of you. Yu Chuiyu was very wrathful, but she thought about Su Luo's ruthless methods, so she closed her eyes and furiously flung herself headfirst to a nearby rock. Chapter 93. To come back from death's door, 6 bang. The sound resounded. Chui Yu's head cracked open. She immediately died and couldn't have been more dead. It was you who committed suicide. I certainly did not make a move to kill you. Su Luo smiled while showing off her snowy white teeth. After that, she quickly began to clean up any traces that may be left behind. Wasting no less than 1 hour, she had erased all traces. Then, she advanced deep into the mountains. She knew that the Jade Lake's fairy wanted to kill her, so she only had 3 possible roads she could take. One way was to avoid the Jade Lake's fairy and find Nangong Luyun. The Jade Lake's fairy wouldn't dare to kill her in front of Nangong Luyun, but this method had a high degree of difficulty. In addition, she really didn't want to see him right now. The second way was to hide deep within this mountainous ancient forest, making sure that the other side could never find her. As for the third way, it was to kill everyone that the Jade Lake's fairy had sent after her. However, that last option, with regards to the current Su Luo, was too unrealistic. The towering, majestic mountains extended endlessly into the distance. Su Luo continuously dove into the forests of the deep mountain. Along the way, she carefully erased any trace of her passing, hoping she would not be found by the other side. She walked for about 2 hours, when a sense of danger assaulted her mind. Su Luo now had a tingling feeling along her back. She knew she was being followed by someone. Also, the person this time, like Chui Yu had said, had martial arts that were at a much higher level than Chui Yu's. Su Luo hid deep within the ancient trees and coldly looked towards the front. There was a woman wearing a light yellow-colored slip over her garments. Her breath was stronger than Chui Yu's, so she was probably a 3rd-ranked martial artist. Su Luo was able to kill Chui Yu because of her sneak attack, but this person was already at the 3rd rank. This time, it would be difficult to handle. Su Luo blended herself into the night, as much as possible, reducing her presence. However, all of a sudden, she could only see this maiden called Air Huang smile coldly. Subsequently, she directly came at Su Luo with an attack. She had actually been discovered. The strength in that sword strike was not something Su Luo could block right now. Su Luo dropped to the ground and rolled away, evading that fatal attack. Right after, she lengthened her steps and dashed ahead. Su Luo knew that if she was to fight one-on-one, this person could easily and effortlessly knock her out. The current her could only evade and hide. Su Luo saw the creeper vine in the forest, and her heart rejoiced. She lifted up the creeper vine and entered a secret hidden cave. The cave was very narrow, with only a square meter of space. Su Luo's back pressed up against the cave's wall. She controlled her breathing and suppressed her heartbeat to its lowest speed. Like a cold-blooded animal during hibernation, it could be sensed that she only had a trace of presence. Through the creeper vine, Su Luo's eyes narrowed into a slit. At the same time, her heart was full of wrath. Jade Lake's fairy, if you want a man, don't you know how to win him over by yourself? What kind of ability is it to kill an outsider like her? Su Luo clenched her fist firmly, a furious intent flashing through her eyes. She vowed to wait until her strength rose. She would absolutely balance this account and properly return the compliment. However, right now, Su Luo could only rage inside and endure it silently. However, her attempt to forbear was too late. Because her emotions had been too stirred up, therefore, her vitality rose too vigorously. Consequently, that Air Huang maiden was finally able to detect a thread of difference. Seeing that the sword was about to strike towards her with a killing intent, Su Luo rolled on the ground, rushing out and leaving the small cave. She managed to escape this time's extremely close and thrilling death chase. However, a good thing didn't last forever. Very quickly, halfway on the road, Su Luo again detected that she had been locked on by Air Huang. This indeed Was the soul of the deceased having not dispersed? 1. Su Luo hid herself in a swamp. Her entire body was buried in the muddy ooze. She was covered in dried-up, decomposing tree leaves, with only a pair of eyes exposed at the surface. She stopped her breathing and wished that this time she could escape. However, this Air Huang maiden stood at the edge of the swamp. There was an unkind fury on her face, like that of someone who had long endured, but was still unable to catch that person. 1. The soul of the deceased having not dispersed. Idiom, figuratively meaning the influence still lingers on. The spirit of some doctrine is still alive. Chapter 94. To come back from death's door. 7. Every time Air Huang was close to catching Su Luo, the opponent's movements would resemble a mudfish and slip through her fingers. Su Luo took advantage of her every careless mistake to escape, causing Air Huang to become extremely frustrated and unhappy. Just like now, right when Air Huang was about to lock onto Su Luo's entire person once again seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Air Huang vented her anger by launching sword attacks at the swamp. The tip of her double-edged sword sparkled with golden lightning as it flipped endless pieces of mud into the sky. Within the sword tip, spirit strength accumulated. The light that came from the sword strike was strong enough to take a life. Whooshed, a band of golden rays flashed by Su Luo's right side, striking her right arm. Su Luo felt a sudden acute pain. It was so agonizing that cold sweat broke out on her face. At that instant, Su Luo was under the impression that her right arm had been severed. It took another 2 hours before Air Huang's deranged venting of her fury had finally ended. Su Luo clenched her teeth while crawling out of the swamp. Her right arm was drenched in blood. The intense pain almost made her pass out. The magnificent Jade Fairy, you did well. This hatred has been engraved into my heart. Su Luo dragged her exhausted body forward until she found a creek to wash clean her wound. At the same time, she also washed her clothes that were covered with mud. Due to excessive blood loss, Su Luo felt that her head was spinning, her vision was becoming blurry, and her body was about to faint. She inwardly cried about the hardships in her heart. Right now, she really could not run anymore. If things continued this way, sooner or later, she would be captured by Air Huang. Suddenly, a light bulb went off in her head, as Su Luo remembered that she had her own treasured space. Although there was nothing in the space, it still contained the spirit spring. This spirit spring was a sacred commodity that had the ability to heal. Su Luo cupped her hands, drew the water from her space, and drank. The spirit spring water was like ambrosial nectar, rich, mellow, and full-bodied. Its pure aroma enticed and beckoned. Su Luo's previous weak mental state became a lot stronger. Her thought processes recovered completely, and she no longer felt dizzy. After drinking her fill, Su Luo again withdrew a handful of water and sprinkled it on her wounds. Although the wounds were not healed immediately, the bleeding slowly stopped. Su Luo released a sigh of relief. At long last, she had come back from death's door. She had survived. However, before Su Luo could complete her sigh of relief, she suddenly felt danger approaching from behind. Su Luo rolled on the ground and avoided a vicious sword strike. The attacker was not Air Huang but Nin Lu. She was among the 4 people that were chasing Su Luo with the intent to kill. Vile girl, so you were hiding here, causing your mother to search for you for a long time. Eat my sword. Without saying another word, Nin Lu directly thrust her sword at Su Luo. The long double-edged sword became numerous rays of light. In a manner of hiding the sky and covering the earth, it launched towards Su Luo. Momentarily, an unnatural gale which was not caused by the weather erupted. Su Luo simply could not deflect the attack. She could only rely on her speed to dodge. However, her body had suffered a severe injury and had also lost a large amount of blood, so she wasn't as nimble as before. Su Luo was too slow to dodge, so she was hit with a piercing blow by the double-edged sword. The sharp pain that exploded almost made her faint on the spot. The wound that she had with great difficulty stopped from bleeding, once again burst open. Overwhelming pain washed over her. Su Luo clenched her teeth. She bit her bottom lip so hard that blood began to seep out. Su Luo could not fall. If she fell down now, she would definitely die. In front of her was an overhanging cliff. The drop from the cliff was deep, so deep that you could not see the bottom. It was also surrounded by heavy fog. Su Luo's eyes flashed with relentless determination. Even if she were to die, she will pull the other person down with her. However, Su Luo did fall down. She weakly fell to the ground, motionless as if she had died. Her body lacked even the tiniest sign of life. A cold smile appeared in Nan Lu's eyes. She walked to Su Luo's body, crouched down and sneered. "Little slut, you have the impertinence to seduce His Highness Prince Jean. Even if you die 100 times, it won't be enough. Rest assured and go. His Highness Prince Jean will be well looked after by our young mistress." After saying this, she hoisted up Su Luo's corpse and quickly threw it over the cliff's edge. Big Sister Qi Ning had said before, destroy not only the corpse, but also the evidence. However, at this moment, misfortune unexpectedly occurred. 1. Hiding the sky and covering the earth, idiom, figuratively meaning earth-shattering, omnipresent, of universal importance. Chapter 95. To search for hidden treasures, 1. When she hoisted up Su Luo's corpse, an ice-cold, cruel smile could be seen at the corner of Su Luo's mouth. She twisted her body around and grabbed onto Nan Lu's sleeves, placing her entire weight on Nan Lu's shoulders. Her body was hanging upside down, with her head facing the ground. That broken dagger ruthlessly stabbed towards Nan Lu's heart from her back. Nan Lu let out a wretched scream. The fury in her heart was at its peak. She endured the intense pain and used all her strength to throw Su Luo off the cliff. However, Su Luo was stuck to her body like gnocchi candy. 1. No matter what she did, she couldn't throw Su Luo off. At the same time, Su Luo unceasingly stabbed her with the dagger. In less than a second, countless numbers of lacerations appeared on Nan Lu's body. However, Nan Lu wouldn't let Su Luo have an easy time of it either. She finally sent a heavy palm strike towards Su Luo. The pit of Su Luo's stomach was hit by that palm. Su Luo only felt a metallic sweetness in her throat, and then a huge stream of blood wildly sprayed out. At this moment, both of them were at the edge of the cliff. The bitingly cold wind screamed through the mountains, blowing on the two bruised and battered people, who were on the verge of collapse. The sound of Nan Lu's grim laugh echoed, as she sent one foot kicking towards Su Luo. This kick contained all of her strength. She had already calculated that this kick was enough to send Su Luo down the cliff, as a way to destroy the body while erasing all the evidence. However, just at this critical juncture, Su Luo grabbed onto and tightly hugged Nan Lu's leg, which was kicking her. Because of the effect of gravity, both of them fell off the cliff. While they were falling, Su Luo used her strength to keep pulling and twisting until she was on top, while Nan Lu was beneath her. Nan Lu was so angry that she wanted to do the same by imitating Su Luo's actions, but Su Luo's foot heavily kicked her downwards. Nan Lu's heart was so enraged that she swore, if there was a next life, she would definitely dismember Su Luo's body and chop it into 10,000 pieces. But there wasn't enough time for her to think much more. Now, the two of them had already dropped close to the bottom of the abyss. Splashed, both of them fell into the water. The deafening sound of water being displaced resounded. Like being shot out of a geyser, water flew high into the sky. At that moment, both of them completely lost consciousness. Both of their bodies were brutally pulled by the current of the creek, continuously colliding with obstructions in the water. Nobody knew where this water flowed to. Unaware of how much time had passed, Su Luo's eyelashes, which were thin as a cicada's wing, trembled slightly. She slowly opened her eyes and saw a rock above her head. She now discovered that the illuminations in all directions were very dim, and that she had been washed ashore by the creek water. Su Luo found that her entire body was in pain. It was so agonizing that it was as if her body had been torn into tiny little pieces. The pain was so great that she was almost numb. Su Luo fetched a handful of water from within her space, and with much difficulty, she drank it. After a long while, she was slowly able to recover. She staggeringly stood up, and suspiciously took measure of her surroundings. This place was a crescent-shaped cave, a cave that had been abandoned for many years. Su Luo was so weak that she could barely stand, but she clenched her teeth and stood up. She swayingly staggered towards the inside of the cave. She supported herself using the cave's wall. With great strain, she walked more than 100 meters into the cave, yet she still hadn't reached the end. This strip of dark tunnel was pitch black and gloomy, as if leading to a borderless underworld. Everything was covered in darkness. However, without knowing why, it seemed as if a mysterious power was beckoning to her. It continuously coaxed her to continue walking deeper inside. She roughly walked about another 300 meters. Su Luo kept breathing in mouthfuls of cold air. Where did this tunnel actually lead to? Could it be that there was no end to this path? She really didn't believe it. Su Luo's competitive heart was aroused. She dragged her exhausted body, step by step, shuffling further into the cave. She walked a full 1,000 meters when all of a sudden, her sharp ears heard the sound from the bubbling water of a creek. When Su Luo walked to the place where the sound was coming from, her eyes couldn't help but open wide, scanning the scene in front of her. At this moment, she thought her own eyes were seeing things. The dark tunnel ended in an unexpectedly large, circular space, which was no less than the size of a basketball court. This empty space appeared to be very spacious. At the center of this place was a purple furnace-shaped standing cauldron. 2 workbenches formed a circle surrounding the cauldron. Some crystal stones and medicinal herbs were sparsely arranged on the workbenches. One yopi candy is a sticky, stretchy caramel-like candy usually cut into rectangles and covered in sesame seeds. Here is a Chinese site that shows how you can make it. 2 The Chinese character is Ding, an ancient Chinese standing cauldron used for cooking, serving, and storage vessel. Smaller version of it was used to hold wine and food during religious rituals. The Ding can have 3 or 4 standing legs. See wiki link. Chapter 96. To search for hidden treasures. 2. Not far from the workbenches, there was a bookshelf with a few books randomly placed on the shelves. However, this was not the cause of Su Luo's astonishment. What amazed her was that there were about 7 to 8 corpses lying in various positions surrounding the workbench. Every corpse was air-dried and withered, as if the owner had passed away a long time ago. It was very clear that these people had been in a very intense fight. Su Luo was in the midst of frowning when suddenly, she sensed danger behind her. Su Luo immediately dropped and rolled on the ground to dodge. Didn't know that your survival skills were so great. Even the fall couldn't kill you, Nanlu said as she leaned on the corner wall for support. Her face displayed a duplicitous and furtive smile, full of strong killing intent. In the beginning, Nanlu was only following orders to kill Su Luo when she attacked the other. However, at this moment, Nanlu was itching to dismember Su Luo into 10,000 tiny pieces for her own benefit. Aren't you also still alive? Su Luo's smile was as light as a cloud and gentle like the wind. Nevertheless, a trace of apprehension appeared in her heart. The opponent was a third-ranked martial artist, while she herself had no spiritual strength. They were both injured, but by observing Nanlu's attack a moment ago, Su Luo realized that Nanlu's injuries were much lighter than hers. Nanlu was about to seize this opportunity to kill Su Luo when suddenly, her line of sight turned towards the interior of the room. With just this one look, she was so amazed that her mouth fell open. Then, an ecstatic expression appeared on her face. Nanlu quickly walked into the room, full of excitement and with an incredulous expression that looked at everything inside. She kept mumbling to herself, This can't be real, right? Could it actually be Zihua's medicinal cauldron? Is it really Zihua's medicinal cauldron? What is a Zihua's medicinal cauldron? Su Luo asked, full of curiosity. At this time, Nanlu already viewed Su Luo as a dead person, so she felt no need to conceal anything from her. Right now, Nanlu really needed to let out the ecstasy in her heart, or else she would go mad from holding it in. I told you you were a good-for-nothing, but you refused to accept it. You haven't even heard of Zihua's medicinal cauldron. Zihua's medicinal cauldron is a top-notch divine artifact pursued by all the apothecaries in the world. If they use this medicinal cauldron to refine medicine, then the rate of success will increase by 100-fold. Never mind. Talking to you is simply like playing a lute to a cow. 1. You don't even know what an apothecary is, right? Confronted by Nan Lu's belittling expression, Su Luo coldly laughed in her heart. Sorry to embarrass you, but this great one actually has a wood-fire duel system and was preparing to level up as an apothecary. At this moment, Nan Lu looked at Zihua's medicinal cauldron in wonder. Her sword was emitting mysterious rays of light as she murmured to herself. It was said that during that time, Elder Zihua went into seclusion. Could it be that he finally died here? Elder Zihua? Su Luo again asked. Who is he? Nan Lu rolled her eyes. You haven't even heard of Elder Zihua? This renowned elder was the world's only Grandmaster-level apothecary. Do you know how many famous families and noble clans under the heavens wanted to curry favor with this renowned elder? Yet you have actually never heard of this Elder Zihua. Your stupidity can't be cured. I really have nothing more to say to you. Su Luo knew that the continent's apothecaries were divided into levels: elementary apothecary, intermediate apothecary, advanced apothecary, elite apothecary, as well as grandmaster apothecary. It was extremely difficult to advance to the next apothecary level. However, apothecaries were rare, thus making every apothecary extremely precious. Su Manor's apothecary was only an elementary apothecary, but due to his existence, he was able to ensure that Su Manor did not topple for the past few decades. She never expected that the Elder Zihua was the legendary rumored Grandmaster Apothecary. It was indeed hard to imagine. Wow! Nan Lu, who was lingering in front of the bookshelf ahead, suddenly loudly shrieked, Primeval Pill Recipes. Unexpectedly, Obscure Pill Recipes, too, is also here. Oh heavens! Jackpot! I really hit the jackpot. Obscure Pill Recipes was Elder Zihua's personal notes. It was a written record of his life's knowledge and experience regarding medicinal recipes. Inside, it also had a lot of primeval pill recipes which had not been passed on and were thought to be lost for eternity. Chapter 97. To Search for Hidden Treasures, 3, including Zihua's medicinal cauldron. These were all treasures that apothecaries would yearn for in their dreams. Countless experts on the continent have sought this obscure pill recipes in order to curry favors with apothecaries. However, after having flipped over the entire continent in their search, no one was able to find it. Yet, she would never have imagined that in her hunt for Su Luo, she had unexpectedly lucked out. She found obscure pill recipes, and even Zihua's medicinal cauldron. At this moment, Nan Lu almost went mad with joy. She trembled with jubilation and extreme excitement. She almost jumped up for joy in her elation. She reached out for the obscure pill recipes, but very quickly she withdrew her hand. She didn't dare. She was afraid of death. This was because the corpses lying haphazardly on the floor told her that Elder Zihua was definitely a poison expert. His belongings definitely could not be encroached upon by just anyone. You, come here. Nan Lu raised her long sword to Su Luo's neck, coldly glaring at her as if looking at a dead man. You want to kill me to silence me? Su Luo lifted the corner of her lips in a slight smile that was not truly a smile. Kill you to silence you? Nan Lu laughed out loud. I definitely will kill you to silence you. Otherwise, if even half a word of what happened here were to spread from your lips, great trouble will befall our Jade Lake Palace. Therefore, you must die. Really? Su Luo faintly smiled. Just great. She too had a similar notion. But right now, you can't die yet. Nan Lu used the long sword to threaten Su Luo and bellowed, Bring that obscure pill recipes over here. Nan Lu wanted to appropriate everything here for herself, but she would not even dare to touch them. Obviously, she was being used as a lab rat. Su Luo felt a chill flashed across her heart. Her gaze fell upon the corpses on the floor. One had a dagger stabbed into it. Icy cold light reflected off the dagger. Fine. Su Luo did not refuse. She walked over step by step, with a harmless smile on her face. Quickly pick it up, Nan Lu coldly commanded. She wanted to use Su Luo to test for poison, to see if this obscure pill recipes had any poison on it. Right now, at this crucial moment, she must not die. Discovering Elder Zihua's cave, what other achievement could compare to it? Having this achievement, in the future, even Qingning that bitch, would be beneath her. Perhaps, she could take those things and escape to faraway places. This also was not a bad idea. Such thoughts quickly flashed through Ninlu's mind. Su Luo watched Ninlu's constantly changing expressions, and a hint of sneer appeared in her eyes. An inexperienced, naive idiot. But the expression on Su Luo's face remained unchanged, and when her hand touched the book, she silently mouthed, "Collect." Suddenly, in an instant, the book vanished from the bookshelf. How what happened? Where's the book? Su Luo pretended to be surprised, and with the expression of having lost her head out of fear, she screamed out loud. Ninlu's whole face had a look of utter disbelief. She had kept a very close eye on it just now, her line of sight never once leaving Su Luo's hand, yet she could only helplessly watch as that book, in an instant, vanished without a trace. What actually happened? The book was fine. How could it just disappear? This time, I must have seen a ghost. Ninlu could confirm that during such a short time, Su Luo had no chance to pull off any tricks. It was a pity that no matter how much she speculates, she could never have guessed that Su Luo was unexpectedly a space mage, with her body carrying a portable space. That was why Ninlu's first reaction was to leap to the bookshelf and search for it continuously. At this time, Su Luo was bending over pretending to search for it, but she furtively pulled out the dagger. Seeing that Ninlu's whole attention was focused on searching through the primeval pill recipes, the corner of Su Luo's mouth lifted into an ice-cold, unrestrained, demonic and sly smile. No sooner said than done. Chapter 98. To Search for Hidden Treasures. 4. With a barely perceivable movement of Su Luo's hand, that dagger had already vanished into her sleeves. All of Ninlu's attention was focused on finding obscure pill recipes, so she did not notice Su Luo's covert movements. Where did it go? Why can't find it? Su Luo questioned with a puzzled look upon her face, firmly gripping the dagger in her sleeves as she stealthily approached Ninlu. Was it because Ninlu frowned? She was about to turn around when she noticed a shadow rapidly coming towards her. Ninlu subconsciously tried to block the attack with her hand, tragically causing her right hand to be severed neatly at the wrist. The place of the cut was flat and smooth. Immediately, blood wildly gushed out from the open wound, as if it wasn't vital to Ninlu's life. Only after seeing the severed hand that had fallen on the ground did Ninlu finally realize what had happened. She screamed out loud in agony. Su Luo was equally unsatisfied with this result. Originally, Su Luo had a well-thought-out plan: directly stab Ninlu's heart through her back. With Su Luo's speed and accuracy, it wouldn't be possible for Ninlu to escape death. Still, who would have known that at the last moment Ninlu would manage to retain her life? If Ninlu did an about-face and ran right now, she would merely lose a hand but would preserve her life. It's a pity that Ninlu was so blinded by her hatred of Su Luo at the moment, so she was itching to make mincemeat out of Su Luo to appease the hatred in her heart. Consequently, Ninlu didn't even take the time to think before picking up the long sword that had fallen with her dismembered hand while ignoring the pain she felt. She directly charged at Su Luo with a murderous strike. A cold smirk flashed across Su Luo's eyes. She took out a book from her space and tossed it toward Ninlu with a smile on her face. Catch it. Don't lose it again. Obscure pill recipes? Ninlu's eyes opened wide. She stared with stunned amazement at the obscure pill recipes that appeared in Su Luo's hand from out of nowhere. Her attention was momentarily distracted. However, this short split-second of carelessness was enough for Su Luo. Immediately after she threw the obscure pill recipes in Ninlu's direction, Su Luo had quickly shifted her body and arrived at Ninlu's back like a ghost. While Ninlu's attention was momentarily distracted, like a demon from hell, Su Luo raised the new dagger she had picked up and slashed Ninlu's neck immediately. Blood gushed forth. Ninlu was staring blankly at the obscure pill recipes in her hand. Her nails had whitened because she was ready to explode with rage. However, Ninlu could only watch the unstoppable blood pour out of her neck. She glared at Su Luo with an expression of having suddenly realized something. Space, space, mage. Afterwards, with an unreconciled expression, Ninlu fell backwards. Her eyes were wide open with malevolence. Even in death, they wouldn't close due to residual resentment. Su Luo grabbed the obscure pill recipes from Nanlu's clenched fingers, patted off the dust, and was all smiles as she said, "Correct, this young lady is a space mage. It's a pity you only realized it as you were dying. It was too late." At this moment, Su Luo was very thankful for her space. In the beginning, she had felt that it was weak. Now, she had slowly discovered its exceptional qualities. After eliminating Ninlu, Su Luo started to look around for treasure. She stood in front of the bookshelf. The shelves were full of advanced pharmacology books, many of which Su Luo couldn't comprehend. However, that didn't matter. She will take all the books back and slowly study them. Su Luo did not grab the books one by one. Instead, she placed the entire bookshelf into her space. Afterwards, Su Luo held her chin and started to circle around Zihua's medicinal cauldron. While circling, she took its measure by looking it up and down. She pondered this medicinal cauldron was nothing special, but why was it so heavy? Yes, it was definitely quite heavy. Su Luo had already tested its weight a moment ago. Chapter 99. To search for hidden treasures. 5. Su Luo wanted to shift the medicinal cauldron, but found that no matter how much strength she used, it wouldn't budge. It was as if the thing was rooted to the ground. If others wanted to take away the medicinal cauldron, it would be extremely difficult. Who knew Su Luo would have the greatest treasure for traveling that others would kill for on her body? Su Luo placed her hand on the edge of the medicinal cauldron and murmured, "Collect." Thus, Zihua's medicinal cauldron, weighing over 5,000 kilograms, vanished on the spot. Su Luo extended her senses into her space and became somewhat worried. She discovered that after circling the cave and taking everything, that little 10 square meters of space had been stuffed full, with barely any space left for her to stand in it. How could she do this? That corner still had a pile of black rocks. She had neither an idea of what it was nor its purpose. Since she couldn't pack it, then she would just abandon it. She would wait until she was fated to come back here and collect it in the future, Su Luo thought sadly. Hence, she bent over to pick up a few pieces, planning to find someone to analyze it. After all, it was left behind by Elder Zihua, something left behind by him. How could it be simple? After throwing exactly 3 rocks into her space, all of a sudden, Su Luo felt a wave of dizziness. It was a pain that she couldn't make heads or tails of it, and that almost knocked her off her feet. But this kind of stinging pain left as quickly as it came. It was gone in the blink of an eye. At this moment, Su Luo checked her space, and suddenly, her mouth formed an O shape. Unexpectedly, this was also possible. Su Luo discovered that her space had grown bigger, even though the change was not obvious. However, at the corner of her space, it had actually grown by square meter. This kind of discovery made Su Luo ecstatic. The space can actually get larger? Su Luo's gaze fell upon the pile of round black stones. Just now, she had put in the medicinal cauldron, books, and other materials, and yet the space did not change. However, after putting in those 3 black little stones, her space changed. Could it be that these rocks were able to increase the size of her space? Whether it was true or not, she could find out by trying again. Su Luo picked up a black rock and threw it in. 1 piece, 2 pieces, 3 pieces. Whoosh! Suddenly, Su Luo felt her head started to ache. It hurt so much that she broke out in cold sweat. But after she opened her eyes, she found that her space had indeed grown bigger by another square meter. It turned out to be true. This discovery allowed Su Luo to put her heart at ease. Without hesitation, she promptly swept up the remaining 10 or so stones from the ground into her space, sweeping the floor clean. Hence, her space had widened again by another 5 square meters. Su Luo was secretly delighted. If there was an opportunity, she would go search for more of these black stones. At this moment, Su Luo had yet to find out what kind of energy actually resided in these black rocks, and how advantageous they would be to her cultivation in the future. However, just as Su Luo was about to leave, she realized that another person was at the entrance. That person was hugging her sword and reclining against the entrance, lips in a sneer, with eyes as cold as a viper unblinkingly staring at her. Su Luo felt her heart jump, silently bemoaning trouble. Just now, she had recklessly swept up all those treasures in the room. Had it possibly been witnessed by her opponent? Since Su Luo could not sense the other's presence when she arrived, this already proved that that person's martial skills were a lot better than hers. Su Luo, your cheap life still has such great luck in surviving. Huang held her double-edged sword, sneering non-stop as she approached Su Luo. Ever since Huang had lost Su Luo's trail, she had continuously searched. Later, she found traces of a fight at the edge of a cliff. Without another word, she shimmied down the creeper vine and searched en route. Unexpectedly, she had discovered this cave that was a completely different world. However, the most important discovery was of Su Luo's body. Huang would never have imagined that the legendary good-for-nothing was actually a space mage that was considered to be extinct on the continent. 1. A Chinese gene equals 0. 5 kilogram or 1 pounds. Here the author stated 10,000 gene, which then equals 5,000 kilogram. We will be converting all measurements to the international system of units. Chapter 100. In Enemy Hands. 1. Moreover, Su Luo's space wasn't small either. Although apothecaries are rare, weighed against the almost extinct space mages, how could they even compare? If the matter of a space mage appearing was to spread, in all likelihood, wouldn't the entire continent be stirred up by this? Unbelievable. Huang really couldn't have imagined it. This vile girl was actually a space mage. Originally, she wanted to kill Su Luo, but now she couldn't. She believed that the young mistress would be overjoyed to give this slut to the venerable master as an offering. After they had placed Su Luo's mind under their control, she could only helplessly throw her life away in service to the Jade Lake Palace. The more Huang thought about it, the more gleeful she became. Her smile had a sinister measuring look as she step by step walked towards Su Luo. Her hand swung the long sword, aiming its sharp tip straight at Su Luo. Little slut, let's see where you can run to now. Su Luo's thoughts were indeed currently suppressed to the point that she felt she was about to die. During the 5,000-kilometer-long march, she had overcome so much and walked so long, too. Just when she saw the end of the road, at this final juncture, she was intercepted by the enemy forces. This was truly the story of the praying mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the black-naped oriole bird behind. Moreover, she was the unfortunate, hateful praying mantis. Nangong Luyun had exhorted and warned Su Luo a great number of times before to be cautious and prudent. She must not let the matter of her being a space mage be revealed. Otherwise, her life would be in constant danger. Now, Su Luo's greatest hidden trump card had been discovered by the Jade Lake Fairy's maid. If this was to leak out, Su Luo's eyes narrowed slightly. A homicidal determination to obliterate all evidence of her unwitting disclosure appeared in Su Luo's heart. However, her expression remained calm and collected. Icy rays from the depths of Su Luo's eyes shot a quick glance at Huang. What if I don't go with you? Do you really think you have the leeway to choose? Huang condescendingly said while casting disparaging glances at Su Luo. Huang's current situation was like the venerable queen up high, while Su Luo was merely an ant that she could easily trample on. Su Luo was just a lowly ant that completely lacked the strength to fight back. But when Huang's vision landed on Nan Lu's body that was on the ground with eyes full of unresolved resentment, staring sightlessly in death, a trace of shock passed through her eyes. Nan Lu had actually been killed? She and Nan Lu had grown up together. They had practiced martial arts together, so Huang was very familiar with Nan Lu's martial arts abilities and knew it was on par with hers. Never in a million years could she have imagined that Nan Lu would die under the hands of the good-for-nothing Su Luo. Nan Lu really had died with unresolved grievances. Looks like I really underestimated you, slut. Huang cast sidelong glances at Su Luo, gnashing her teeth as her rage burst forth. Huang was itching to finish off Su Luo with one sword strike. Regrettably, she could not kill Su Luo now. Su Luo was this continent's almost extinct space mage. Furthermore, she was also a space mage that did not have any power to protect herself. Huang secretly speculated that if she was to take Su Luo to an auction house and sell her, on the basis of this little slut's innate gift and appearance, shouldn't she be able to sell for an unprecedented sky-high price? It would indeed be a fortune that could tempt a person's heart. Su Luo examined Huang's constantly changing sinister expressions and also turned her head to look at the corpse of the fallen Nanlu. A bitter look appeared in Su Luo's eyes. Her secret having been discovered was disastrous. Due to this, Huang would certainly increase her vigilance. Su Luo's small tricks from before could not be used again. With a bitter smile on her face, Su Luo raised both of her hands in surrender. Huang had learned a lesson from Nanlu's mistake, and as a result had become very cautious. Huang took out a dark red blood-colored rope and tied both of Su Luo's hands behind her back. Huang had bound Su Luo so tightly that the joint looked seamless. Behave. Don't even think about escaping. Huang warned with a stern voice. Su Luo only made a slight movement. When Huang's icy-cold long sword sliced at her neck, a thin thread of blood slowly seeped out of the cut. Su Luo knew that if she resisted, on account of having killed two of the opponent's sister-in-arms, Huang would probably, without a second thought, either break or cut off her arms and legs. 5,000-kilometer-long march written in Chinese was 10,000 li, 2 li equals 1 kilometer. This is a reference to the historical one made by the eventual communist leader Mao Zedong in October of 1934. Before World War II, China had a civil war/internal struggle for power between the Chinese National Party led by Chiang Kai-shek and the Chinese Red Army of the Communist Party. Chiang Kai-shek was about to eliminate the Red Army at Jiangxi when Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai led the Long March to escape the encirclement. The march was a bitter one that lasted a year with only 10% of the original troops surviving till the end. 2. The Chinese characters stated 25,000 li equals 125,000 kilometers. I took the figurative meaning here because the Long March was only 9,000 kilometers. Chapter 101. In Enemy Hands, 2. She definitely didn't want that kind of tragedy to occur to her own body. Since that was the case, all she could do was to wait and see. She was pushed to the front by Huang. While walking slowly, Su Luo's thought process was like electricity. Plan after plan rapidly went through her head, as she thoroughly searched for a way to escape her predicament. She struggled to break free of the ropes that bound her hands behind her back, but sadly found that the red rope actually became even tighter. The rope tightened so much that it practically cut into her flesh. Su Luo sucked in a cold breath and immediately abandoned this method. Huang scoffed. You think it's just an ordinary rope? Truly laughable. That is the restraining spirit rope. Someone who has no spiritual power actually wants to force it open. Dream on. Spirit strength, was it? After her sealed space had been opened, Su Luo was no longer that good-for-nothing without a bit of spirit power. However, Huang once again opened her mouth and interrupted Su Luo's sweet dreams. Even if you have spirit strength, without knowing the method, then you are only trying to no avail. Su Luo suddenly became frustrated. All right, this method could also not be used. While walking, Su Luo pretended to trip over her own feet and fell to the ground, with her back against the wall. In an instant, she pulled out the new dagger from her space to cut the rope. To her displeasure, she discovered that the rope couldn't be cut. Okay then, she had to think of other ways. Huang, with a sneer, looked at her. Stop trying, you can't escape. Obediently come with me to the Jade Lake Palace. Even though you know that I'm a space mage, you still use this method to invite me? You're not afraid that I'll blacken your name in front of your master? Su Luo tried to use words to divert her attention. Blacken my name? You really think that you're a notable person? Huang laughed mockingly, casting a sidelong glance at Su Luo, with a face full of disdain. Could it be that you don't know that there is a magical technique called control intentions? It can directly control the human mind, making people into walking corpses. Do you really think that after you arrive at the Jade Lake Palace, you are able to choose? Control intentions? Like walking corpses? Su Luo's heart was palpitating with fear. On the surface, Su Luo kept a wronged and lonely expression, but in her heart, she was secretly coming up with ideas. This Jade Lake's fairy's maid must be killed before she meets up with the Jade Lake's fairy. Su Luo absolutely could not let Huang leak out her secret, or else her life in the future would not be peaceful. They eventually reached the end of the long, secluded tunnel, and they had already walked past the long, winding underground river. Although Su Luo had racked her brain, she still had not thought of an escape plan. She could not help but be secretly anxious. Now, speaking of the Jade Lake Fairy's side, at the side of Nangong Luyun, there currently stood the figure of a tall man dressed in black clothing. His entire body was wrapped in a black robe. He was standing rigidly straight, giving people a cold and harsh kind of feeling. Nangong Luyun received him. His gaze was devilishly charming and ruthless, revealing an ice-cold majestic light. Are they all present?
Yes.
The black-clothed man was very respectful. 3,000 members of the Tiger Wolf Regiment have all been gathered, awaiting your Highness's command. Search the Sunset Mountain Range with full force. You must find her. Nangong Liuyun's face was a bit pale. Underneath his seemingly unperturbed eyes was concealed a hawk-like penetrating sharp edge. His body was covered in a solemn and murderous aura. If you can't find her, then there's no need to return to this king. Yes, sir. The black-clothed man's straight and tall body bent down in a bow. He paid his respects and then turned around. He lifted his hands. Immediately, 3,000 people, shrouded in black robes, split into groups of 10, scattering in all directions to search. Standing nearby, the Jade Lake's fairy had her fists clenched, looking at Nangong Luyun once again speaking his desires. Her serene and undisturbed face had a trace of fury that was difficult to conceal. She never would have thought that Nangong Luyun would actually send the Tiger Wolf Regiment into the Sunset Mountain Range. Chapter 102. In enemy hands, 3, others would not know, but she knew. The lowest level in the Tiger Wolf Regiment was at the 3rd rank. Their average strength was at 4th rank. With such a strong team entering the forest, she hoped that Qi Ning had already killed that slut and destroyed both the corpse and the evidence. Otherwise, this affair would become problematic. Even more infuriating to the Jade Lake Fairy was that this Tiger Wolf Regiment had been secretly trained with painstaking effort, personally by Nangong Luyun. These were his secret troops and one of his greatest trump cards. She had never thought that Nangong Luyun, because of Su Luo, would reveal these troops. This spoke volumes of Su Luo's position in his heart. This discovery almost made Jade Lake Fairy grind her teeth to dust. Third senior brother, is there a need to launch such a large campaign? Maybe Qi Ning has already found Su Luo. After all, the Tiger Wolf Regiment is formed from 5 years of your blood and sweat. Jade Lake Fairy had a perfect smile, similar to a warm summer breeze. Nangong Liuyun's pair of beautiful eyes were bright as stars, his face pallid yet resolute. If the Tiger Wolf Regiment can be exchanged for Luo girl's safety, don't mention one troop, even if it's all of them in the regiment, why would I be unwilling to part with them? As long as his Luo girl was safe, regardless of the price, he would pay it. A malicious expression flashed across Jade Lake Fairy's eyes. She was only nearly able to continue maintaining her gently smiling face, except for a slight stiffening at the corners of her lips. However, Nangong Luyun was no longer looking at her. He had closed his eyes and started to heal his injuries through cultivation. He had to quickly recover his strength. His Luo girl was still waiting for him. Speaking of Su Luo's side, she still did not know that Nangong Luyun had already sent men out searching for her. Being escorted by Huang like a criminal, Su Luo did her best to stall for time en route, but eventually, she still needed to face the inevitable conclusion. Seeing that they would be reaching that 1,000-year-old ancient tree in another hour, Su Luo's heart grew extremely anxious. She guessed that the Jade Lake Fairy would be at that 1,000-year-old ancient tree. If Su Luo waited until she was in the Jade Lake Fairy's grasp, the situation she faced would be far different from the present. By then, it would be even harder to escape. Su Luo's heart was secretly worried. Suddenly, just past the mountain peak, Huang's footsteps stopped. Her eyes coldly gazed at Su Luo, sneering, "Damnable girl, with your eyes circling around, still thinking to escape?" Su Luo smiled sweetly and bluntly replied, "Haven't you heard it before? Fugitives who don't want to run aren't good fugitives." "Oh, then you must be really disappointed." Huang raised the back of her blade and gestured at herself. "What are you going to do?" Su Luo's heart had a faint sense of dread. "You're not thinking about alarming everyone by shouting when we are near the camp, with the notion of attracting His Highness Prince Jin's attention, right? Say, how can I possibly give you such a chance?" Huang laughed treacherously. "So, Miss Su, I will just have to work a little harder and carry you back." "Hey, I'm very heavy." Su Luo panicked. "No problem, I can carry you." Huang laughed shadily with a measuring look. With her words barely finished, Huang struck without warning towards the back of Su Luo's neck with the blunt side of her blade. If she were to be knocked out, she would really become fish meat on the chopping board, to be taken advantage of. Su Luo started to panic in her anxiety, but she could not come up with any solution. Presently, both her hands were bound by a red rope made of an unknown material, with the slightest movement causing it to constrict even tighter. By now, it had already cut into her flesh. If she moved again, it would probably slice off her hand. Extreme anxiety filled Su Luo's heart, yet there was nothing she could do. However, the goddess of fortune had always stood on Su Luo's side. Even though she let Su Luo experience numerous catastrophes, even being hunted down by countless people, she would always deliver a pleasant surprise at the very last moment. Just like right now. Chapter 103, Shaken to the Core, 1. Just at the crucial moment when Huang's sword was about to cut into Su Luo's back, suddenly, the vast silhouette of a divine beast emerged from behind Huang. Abruptly, a black whirlwind arrived. Immediately, the sandstorm left pebbles in its path, and dust covered the sky. A desolate and harsh aura rapidly spread in all directions. Even the night had gained a savage, bloody atmosphere. A familiar omen, an ominous premonition. Su Luo turned around and ran. "You still want to run?" Huang let out a cold laugh, raising the sword and stabbed towards Su Luo's back. Su Luo's heart was extremely anxious. Huang was enough trouble. Why had the venerable divine dragon also came back to join the action? Didn't she and her treasured son already return home? This situation was really that when it rains, it pours. All the misfortune had been encountered by her. Su Luo felt her heart crying out that it was unfair. Huang's sword fiercely struck out, however, the moment it came within 12 centimeters, of Su Luo, it stopped. The sword tip sat there frozen in midair, unable to advance even another centimeter forward. Moreover, in this life, Huang would never be able to advance forward a single centimeter more. It was because at this moment, her body seemed to be held in place. Her entire body was stiff as iron, standing there like an ice sculpture. Her jaw could not stop shuddering, cold sweat pouring down her forehead. She seemed to be enduring a great deal of pain. Suddenly, only the sound of a loud boom could be heard. Su Luo used all her strength to throw her entire body forward, protecting her head and firmly lying on her stomach on the ground. It was only after the noise had ended that she had unsteadily stood up and looked back. With this one look, even she, who had seen countless bloody scenes, could not help but be speechless. Huang's entire body had exploded. Her limbs were scattered all around, and blood was splattered all over the place. The flesh on her body was charred to a crisp. Even her skeleton had almost turned into powder. The ground was drenched in blood, marked with smears of guts and gore. This was a scene that could make anyone seeing it to throw up. Su Luo turned around and wanted to run, but the divine dragon had already appeared in front of her. Facing the divine dragon's pair of ice-cold eyes that were like an ancient abyss, Su Luo's heart involuntarily trembled. A chill that she had never felt before slowly rose from the soles of her feet to the rest of her body, to her limbs and through her bones. She even felt that her back was trembling. Just now, Huang's body exploding was clearly the divine dragon's handiwork. It only had to wave a claw, and Huang had exploded tragically, not even leaving behind a skeleton. Thinking about how from the start she had kidnapped its treasured son, Su Luo felt her forehead covered with cold sweat. All of a sudden, the enormous divine dragon in front of her changed shape. Before Su Luo's eyes, unexpectedly appeared the uttermost beautiful and handsomest man. A head of silvery, snow-white hair that poured down in torrents, lightly and wantonly dancing in the wind. It curved lovingly and was inseparable from that beautiful face, poetic and picturesque like a painting. A noble and stern face, with an expression clearly written in 4 characters. I alone am supreme. This person. Could this be the venerable divine dragon that was chasing her and trying to kill her earlier? Actually, it was not a dragon mother, but a dragon father? Su Luo felt as if her throat was being choked, unable to say a word. Insignificant human. The venerable divine dragon's phoenix eyes narrowed. A murderous aura flashed from the depth of his eyes. Su Luo had all along kept a close watch on the eyes of the venerable divine dragon. Upon seeing the murderous intent, without having to think, she immediately dropped down in a protective posture and rolled into a big hole beside her. 1 CUN equals 3. 715 centimeters or 1.46 inches. It measures the width of a person's thumb at the knuckle. Here the author used 3 CUN, so about 12 centimeters. Chapter 104 Shaken to the core. 2. Surrounded by deafening noise, Su Luo felt a murderous air sailing over her head in passing. Half of her head peeked out from within the hole. Su Luo was astonished when her eyes met with the venerable divine dragon's icy cold eyes. After one deadly attack by him, she was miraculously still alive. The venerable divine dragon frowned in displeasure. Shameless human, you dare to rob me of my son. Since the silly little dragon was not around, with a wave of the venerable divine dragon's hand, her life would end. Su Luo glanced at what little remained of Huang's body. She nervously swallowed and changed her expression to a flattering smile. Her starry eyes looked at the divine beast, silently made a solemn vow, and clenched her fist. Your venerable divine dragon, sir. That was a misunderstanding. A complete misunderstanding. It was absolutely not what you think. I certainly had no intention of kidnapping the little dragon from your eminence. Su Luo was determined to never divulge the truth about what happened. The consequences of admitting her guilt came down to one word: death. The highest level of deceit is not to fool another, but to fool even yourself. Su Luo made a fist. She was going to lie at a level approaching the celestial realm. The venerable divine dragon lowered his eyes, sweeping her with a look of disdain. I'll give you a chance to explain. The next few words would determine whether she would live or die. She hurriedly inverted right from wrong in her mind and began to speak. In summary, the story was that in order to let the divine dragon concentrate on defeating the phoenix, she had taken away the little divine dragon to protect him. Finally, Su Luo said wholeheartedly, in the end, the little divine dragon was returned to you without a single hair harmed on his head. The venerable divine dragon's cold eyes were filled with deadly stillness. He disdainfully glanced at Su Luo. Despicable human. You dared to make an equal contract with my son. Divine dragons were very distinguished while despicable humans were insignificant, yet both sides had entered into a contract of equals. How could the venerable divine dragon accept this? At this time, the venerable divine dragon had one hand behind his back. From within his sleeve, something small began to move. A small provocative head poked out as if desiring to get out. However, with just a pat by the venerable divine dragon, it became confused and disoriented, thus tumbling back into the sleeve. Su Luo began to cry inside her heart. If she said that it was the little divine dragon who had initiated the contract, she speculated that the venerable divine dragon would definitely kill her with one slap. However, the venerable divine dragon might not know all of the facts of the matter. Su Luo wiped her sweat. She could only try to divert the venerable divine dragon's attention. Su Luo pointed to Er Huang's mutilated body with a look of indignation. The venerable divine dragon. When this shameless disciple saw me holding the little dragon before, she tried to force me to surrender the little dragon. She tied me up, the results of which you can clearly see. When I told her that the little divine dragon had to be returned to you, she attempted to kill me to vent her anger. Fortunately, we encountered you, the venerable divine dragon. Your eminence descended like the immortal god of justice. Your prestige and might are as vast as the oceans. Your mighty dragon appearance is formidable. The venerable divine dragon had the kindness to save me. I will engrave it into my heart. Even if I were to die 10,000 times, I won't speak of this. The venerable divine dragon let out a humph sound, lifted his chin, and knotted his brows. Graceful words. Definitely the flowery speech of humans, Su Luo silently thought. You knew that the words were elegant but insincere, yet weren't you very pleased to hear it? The venerable divine dragon looked at the shattered pieces of the corpse and also looked at Su Luo's thin and weak body. His brows once again wrinkled. Incapable human, even such a tiny ant dared to take unfair advantage of you. Okay, Su Luo conceded. This venerable divine dragon was very literate and accomplished. Every word was full of condescending sarcasm. Despicable human, shameless human, incapable human, XX, human. The space before human could be filled with 1,000,000 derogatory words according to his whim. It actually should not be too surprising. Confronting the human race, the dragon race had a natural superiority complex. The dragon population grew very slowly. However, each baby dragon that was born had outstanding innate talent. Even if they did not cultivate while maturing and just spent time eating and sleeping, they can still stand shoulder to shoulder with the strongest humans. However, the ant that the venerable divine dragon referred to was Er Huang, right? Su Luo defended herself. That was because earlier my spiritual power was sealed. Of course I wouldn't be able to beat her. Once I've learned some magical techniques, naturally I will be far better than her. Chapter 105. Shaken to the core. 3. Suddenly, a slender hand was placed on Su Luo's head. Was he about to swat her dead? While Su Luo was at a loss, a sudden burst of throbbing pain rushed through her head. With just a moment's effort, the venerable divine dragon withdrew his hand and reluctantly expressed his satisfaction. The dragon ring actually recognized you, a shallow, crippled human, as its owner. What a waste. First, excluding whether she was shallow or not, but a cripple. The corner of Su Luo's mouth twitched. Fine. This world was one where strength ruled. Whatever the person with the hardest fist said was the truth. Just when she was in the midst of being depressed, she felt the restraining spirit rope binding her loosen. Once more, she raised her head and saw that the restraining spirit rope which was in the venerable divine dragon's hand had been reduced to fine powder, really worthy of being called the mighty and powerful venerable divine dragon. Just as Su Luo was sighing ruefully, she suddenly saw a dark shadow being thrown towards her arms, which she subconsciously caught. Awoo. The adorable little dragon looked up at her with his cute little face. His large, watery, and clear eyes looked at Su Luo with a aggrieved expression. This is... Su Luo was confused by the venerable divine dragon's action. Why would he throw his family's treasured son to her? Didn't he spend a great deal of effort chasing after the little dragon before recovering him? Take good care of him. The venerable divine dragon frowned. Subsequently, he tossed a jade piece at her in a haughty and dismissive manner. What is this? Su Luo carefully sized up that white piece of jade. It was smooth and glossy, like crystallized amber. Her beautiful eyes observed the amber alertly with a very perplexed expression. Could the divine dragon really be this nice? He actually gave her something? Ignorant human. The venerable divine dragon's lowered eyebrows expressed his dissatisfaction, both hands tucked behind his back. In a rare moment, he made a lengthy statement. Contained inside the jade piece is my spirit strength, condensed into a virtual image of me. In case little Ming encounters danger, after you crush the jade, this virtual image will come out to help. The venerable divine dragon's virtual image formed from his spirit strength? Since his venerableness was so confident in himself, then it would be very powerful, right? Then from now on, this piece of jade can only be used once. The venerable divine dragon lifted an eyebrow and shot her an indifferent glance. Inside, there is a manual of dimensional imprint instructions. Whether you can learn it all depends on your ability and luck. Su Luo was dumbfounded. In other words, if she still hasn't finished learning the dimensional imprint when she crushes this piece of jade that could save her life only once, then wouldn't she be unable to learn dimensional imprint later? This was indeed a difficult choice to make. Seeing Su Luo's confused and conflicted appearance, the venerable divine dragon was extremely pleased. He used his absolute superiority as an advantage to look down on her and apathetically said, "If my son has an accident, you will die." The venerable divine dragon gave the adorable little dragon a glare that conveyed the feeling of hating the iron for not becoming steel. However, the adorable little dragon took no note of it as he flashed his huge limpid and bright eyes at Su Luo. His pair of paws tenaciously grabbed onto Su Luo's sleeves and refused to let go. Not waiting for Su Luo to respond, the venerable divine dragon used a little strength to rub the adorable little dragon's head. He decisively flung his sleeves. His tall figure then vanished without a trace. After the venerable divine dragon disappeared, golden rays of light flashed from the adorable little dragon's body. While Su Luo was looking on, the adorable little dragon's body unexpectedly underwent a huge change. The originally fang-bearing and claw-brandishing young dragon had turned into a cute, lovable puppy. Furthermore, his body was enshrouded in white velvety fur that meekly drooped to the ground. This type of whole-body transformation caused Su Luo to be completely dumbfounded. The little dragon had actually turned into a puppy? However, this way was also good. Su Luo had originally been worried that after taking the little dragon into human society, with her current strength, she would not be able to protect him. Now that the venerable divine dragon had turned him into a puppy, this relieved her of countless burdens. It seemed that although the venerable divine dragon looked indifferent and heartless, he had thought over this situation very thoroughly and meticulously. Ah, hoo, the adorable little dragon squirmed around in Su Luo's embrace, like a little piglet. You little hot potato, alas. Su Luo glared at the little thing in front of her and used her slender fingers to poke his head. Chapter 106, Shaken to the Core, 4. Recalling the venerable divine dragon's warning, Su Luo just wanted to spit out blood. Now, her life was inseparably linked with the adorable little dragon's. If the adorable little dragon was harmed in any way, then she would lose her life. Su Luo became aware of her body's fatigue and the grumbling sounds coming from her own stomach. After a restless night of being chased by people intent on killing her, Su Luo was so famished that her rib cage was almost visible. She placed the adorable little dragon on the ground, letting it run around and play. Su Luo took out the magical beast eggs left over from yesterday's meal. She dug a pit, placed the eggs inside, and covered them. Then she used a small fire to slowly bake the eggs. Having finished setting everything up, Su Luo now had time to check up on the adorable little dragon. After seeing the adorable little dragon's actions, Su Luo had a strong urge to throw her hands in the air or slap her own forehead in mortification. Couldn't this little guy play with anything else? It had actually decided to go and chase after butterflies. If the adorable little dragon was simply chasing after butterflies, then that wouldn't be a problem. However, the way the little guy went about it was anything but ordinary. Its thin little legs wobbled and swayed as it bounced after the butterfly. Seeing that the butterfly was about to fly out of its line of sight, a mouthful of dragon's breath containing fire puffed out. Immediately, the pitiful butterfly was reduced to ashes and blown away. But the little guy didn't seem to understand what had happened. The adorable little dragon looked in all directions, searching for the butterfly that had already been toasted by his dragon's breath. The little guy looked until he became quite desperate, but still couldn't find the butterfly. Consequently, the adorable little dragon's pair of huge, limpid, and bright eyes contained a pitiful expression. It ran with trembling and staggering steps into Su Luo's embrace to complain. Su Luo didn't even have enough energy to scold the little dragon. She could only extend 2 fingers and poke its head without much strength while saying only 3 words. "You little idiot. Wasn't it said that when baby dragons were hatched, their minds already contained inherited knowledge? Weren't they supposed to be very intelligent, full of wisdom and foresight? Why was it that her contracted little divine dragon seemed like an ignorant infant that hasn't even been weaned yet?" A gloomy thought appeared in Su Luo's mind. Could it be that this little guy's intellect was so low that his dragon father wasn't being generous when abandoning him in her care? The little guy was unaware of the doubts going through his new owner's head. At this moment, his little paws had dug out a magical beast's egg that was bigger than his head. The little dragon simply opened its mouth wide and swallowed the entire egg in one mouthful. By the time Su Luo noticed this, it was already too late. "My morning meal." 3 lines of veins burst out from Su Luo's forehead. Whimper, whimper. The adorable little dragon's pair of huge eyes had a bewildered and lost expression as it looked at Su Luo. His little tongue was still licking its lips while the little dragon grumbled in Su Luo's head. "Hungry, eat." Su Luo recalled the venerable divine dragon's decree. Her heart suddenly felt guilty as if she had committed a crime. After all, the venerable divine dragon had given her a piece of jade as payment for raising this little guy. How could she let his son go hungry? Su Luo very quickly hunted down a rabbit and bought it back. After skinning and washing the rabbit clean, she stuffed its abdominal cavity with redroot gromwell and other types of flavoring herbs. She also rubbed a layer of cumin on the rabbit's skin before finally piercing it with a twig so she could slowly roast it over the fire. While Su Luo was roasting the rabbit, she was also instructing the adorable little dragon. "Be good and wait a little bit. It will be ready to eat soon." "Awu awu." Little Meng Meng in a human-like manner sat on Su Luo's lap. Both of his little paws was placed on each side of its chin, sniffing the fragrant scent of barbecuing meat and watching the meat making sizzling sounds. Its pair of star-like eyes were filled with great anticipation and expectation. "Oh, almost ready." Su Luo watched the oil sizzling on the roasting rabbit with a very good mood. "Awu, awu." A silvery line of saliva hung at the corner of little Meng Meng's mouth. The smell was very appetizing. The little dragon really wanted to eat the meat. Suddenly, little Meng Meng's nose began to itch. It became more and more itchy. Achoo! A stream of dragon's breath puffed out without warning. Chapter 107. Shaken to the core. 5. 3 fireballs shot towards the delicious-smelling roasting rabbit, and in a split second, that shiny, browned roasting rabbit was turned into a black, ashy lump. The roasting twig holding up the rabbit broke. A snap sound rang out. That black, ashy lump dropped to the ground, disintegrating into fine powder which then scattered to the wind. The veins on Su Luo's hands bulged. Little Meng Meng's face seemed dumbfounded. Not waiting for Su Luo to exert her authority as the owner, little Meng Meng had already rolled to the ground and started to wail, "Awu, awu." He looked heartbreakingly at the powderized rabbit. Crocodile tears flowed down and misted over his eyes. He turned his head around, and in a very wronged and innocent manner, stared at her accusingly. Su Luo. Why did it seem as if she was the one who did something wrong? Just when Su Luo was still speechless, suddenly, she felt the danger of a human's presence. She picked up little Meng Meng and turned around to run, but found that it was already too late. She didn't know when it had happened, but now, all around her was a troop of 10 people, who tightly surrounded her. Every member in this troop had their entire body shrouded by a black cloak. It was impossible to see their features clearly. They had a cruel and bloodthirsty aura that gave off a cold and detached impression to people. Could it be that the Jade Lake's fairy had again sent people to murder her? Hugging little Meng Meng to her, Su Luo's heart secretly cried out bitterly. Previously, those people had come at her separately, so she could still use her wits to bravely fight each opponent one by one. But now, she was suddenly swarmed by about 10 people. It would be difficult for her 2 fists to withstand their 4 legs. Just as a bitter expression started to take over Su Luo's face, suddenly, the leader of those people, with his deep cold voice, issued out, "Could your distinguished self be Miss Su?" Su Luo suspected even more that these people were sent by the Jade Lake's fairy. Able to send out such a team, among the prominent people she had offended, other than the Jade Lake's fairy, who else was there? Could she deny this? Very clearly she could not. This was because the leader of these person actually took out a picture scroll from within his chest area. He looked back and forth, comparing Su Luo to the image on the picture scroll. Finally, he rolled up the picture scroll and placed it back. His pair of dark, solemn eyes looked towards Su Luo without a trace of warmth. "Come with us." They weren't going to kill her on the spot? Su Luo's heart was secretly on guard. Rationally speaking, Heir Huang had already died, so the Jade Lake Palace's people wouldn't know her secret now, thus they had no reason to leave her alive. Could it be they weren't people sent by the Jade Lake's fairy? Then who could that person who sent them be? Su Luo's heart became more alert. She softly asked, "Who sent you guys?" "They actually had a picture scroll." "No comment," responded the leader of the group of people, whose indifference was like an azura that came from hell. His appearance was of a person who had lived for a long time in the dark shadows, giving off a brooding, bloodthirsty, icy aura. Other people might view this type of person with mind-numbing fear. However, Su Luo had also lived in that dark world as a gold medal level assassin in her previous world. Thus, she knew this feeling well, and it gave her a feeling of familiarity and comfort. "Okay, I'll go with you." Since resistance was futile, she could only go with them. Although Su Luo's expression was indifferent, her heart had relaxed some. The 10 people surrounded her, with her in the center, so as to keep a close watch over her, while also protecting her. Even though she felt a bloodthirsty, cold atmosphere from their bodies. That was their aura from having resided in the dark world for a long time, not a killing intent aimed at her. At this time, hiding behind an ancient tree was Qin Ning, who was so angry that she nearly spit out blood. She had followed the tracks looking for Su Luo, but what she couldn't believe was that along the way, she could only find Cui Yu and Heir Huang's corpses. In all likelihood, Nun Lu had probably ended up in the same disastrous state, while that Su Luo was actually safe and secure. She was even so carefree as to leisurely roast a rabbit. This discovery caused Qin Ning to almost grind her teeth into dust. Qin Ning didn't know that those 10 people in black robes were His Highness Prince Jin's secret troops. However, she had a hunch that if Su Luo was taken away by them, information about young mistress wanting to kill Su Luo would be divulged. Then this matter could definitely affect the feelings and trust between the young mistress and Prince Jin. Therefore, this time, Su Luo had to die. Qin Ning was concealed within the lush leaves on top of the ancient tree, her arms pulling the string of a bent bough. A sharp feathered arrow emitted a dim radiance in the dark night. Chapter 108, Life and Death at Stake, 1. Suddenly, a whoosh sound erupted as a meteor-like arrow flew towards Su Luo's throat. Qin Ning held a cruel sneer at the corners of her lips. Her eyes glowed with a vicious, malicious light as the bow in her hands continuously launched arrows non-stop. The whoosh, whoosh, whoosh sounds were endless as cold arrows flew out. "Watch out!" Among the bodyguards protecting Su Luo, the black robe leader was the first to notice an anomaly in the air and loudly raised the alarm before heading in front of Su Luo to block the arrow. When it came to weapons, Qin Ning's expertise was in using the bow and arrow. Her archery skills came from having been personally taught by the archery god elder Shou Wu. Vicious and bold, the archery technique was awe-inspiring. The strength displayed with the bow made it seem as if the wielder could launch a powerful arrow that would even pierce the sky. If it was a direct confrontation, Qinning might lose. However, when it came to sniping using icy arrows, she definitely had cause to be proud. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 9 stars shot in succession, 9 arrows bursting with a sinister, lethal aura. 10 black-robed men surrounded Su Luo, putting her in the center. Their weapons were deployed vigorously, and their skillful movements were quick like the wind. They had enclosed Su Luo completely. Their protection was flawless. These people. Su Luo's eyes held a flash of doubt. Looking at their battle formation, their priority clearly was to protect her, even if they had to sacrifice their own lives. But why? Who would sacrifice these strong killers for her protection? Su Luo's heart blazed with heavy suspicion. Earlier, when the black-robed men had located Su Luo, they had released a burst of blue fireworks into the sky. When the signal sounded, Nangong Luyun was at the most crucial moment of his healing regimen, yet he decisively forced himself to cease the process. Suddenly, Nangong Luyun opened his eyes, revealing an expression of profound fondness in their depths. Nangong Luyun's personal bodyguard Ling Feng stood nearby. With both hands holding his sword to his chest, Ling Feng was vigilantly observing their surroundings in a state of readiness. Nangong Luyun suddenly stood. His hawk-like eyes gazed sharply at Ling Feng and with eyes full of elation asked, "They found her?" Ling Feng worriedly looked at Nangong Luyun. "Please rest easy, Your Highness." The 11th group sent back the signal, stating that they have already found Miss Su and that she is safe and sound. She does not seem to be injured. Nangong Luyun's demonically magnificent lips that were as red as blood suddenly spread into a perfect smile, so incomparably alluring that it could charm all living things. Ling Feng could only look on as Nangong Luyun laughed heartily. "Good. Very good. I knew that Luo girl would be fine." Cough, cough, cough. He loudly coughed, then covered his chest, forcibly suppressing his roiling qi and blood before resolutely ordering, "Lead the way." Ling Feng worriedly glanced at Nangong Luyun's wound and hesitatingly said, "Master, Group 11 is currently escorting Miss Su here. Moreover, the remaining groups are on their way to meet up with Group 11. How about?" Nangong Luyun's gaze turned malicious and bloodthirsty. His cold anger flared, and a thick layer of ice encased Nangong Luyun's chiseled face. He dispassionately glared at Ling Feng. "Lead the way." But, considering that His Highness had injured his internal organs by forcibly stopping the recovery process, he really should not be moving about. Besides, Miss Su has already been found and was on her way here. Ling Feng did not understand what the rush was. Nangong Luyun's eyes exhibited a strong tyrannical air. From head to toe, he was encased in a layer of frost that isolated him from the rest of the world. He raised his sleeve. A critical palm strike lashed out, and Ling Feng's body abruptly flew backwards. By the time Ling Feng managed to come to a stop and crawl up to a kneeling position, a trail of fresh blood was flowing down from the corner of his mouth. "Lead the way." Nangong Luyun's body emitted an intense chill. Cold as ice, his entire person resembled a destructive, ruthless glacier. Ling Feng covered the painful gash. He reluctantly but solemnly nodded before staggering up and heading forward, taking the lead. Chapter 109, Life and Death at Stake, 2, Third Senior Brother. The Jade Lake Fairy's footsteps were lithe and graceful, like that of the immortal fairy Ling Bo One. She floated to Nangong Luyun's side. She stood there with an elegant and graceful posture. Her beautiful calm face had a touch of concern. Her beautiful eyes were clouded like liquid mist. They appeared to silently gaze at Nangong Luyun with traces of pity. Nangong Luyun's red lips slowly lifted. His deep, glittering eyes were shining like the lively, colorful rays of sunlight. "Luo Luo was found. I'll go bring her back right now." Jade Lake Fairy's hands, which were hidden within her sleeves, clenched into fists. She was barely able to maintain the perfect smile on her face. He would rather hurt himself and forcefully stop the recovery process to go look for her. He would rather injure his personal bodyguard, who had been with him for more than 10 years, in order to go look for her. Third Senior Brother. If that Miss Su knew of your current situation, she would certainly not blame you. It's better if you remain behind to recuperate from your injuries. However, before the Jade Lake Fairy could finish speaking, Nangong Luyun had brushed her aside and left with staggered large steps. He left her with only these vague words. Wait for us to come back. Wait for us to come back. It was not. Wait for me to come back. Behind him, the veins of the Jade Lake Fairy's pair of slender hands suddenly burst out. Her matchless beautiful face became extremely hideous and distorted, and her eyes shone with a vicious insanity. Why was that little slut still not dead? She had even been found by the Tiger Wolf Regiment. The otherworldly Jade Lake Fairy punched the 10,000-year-old ancient tree beside her, and the ancient tree immediately turned into dust. How in the world did Qi Ning not accomplish such a task? She couldn't even kill a good-for-nothing who was without a touch of spirit strength. What a piece of trash. They were all useless garbage. No, she couldn't let third senior brother find Su Luo before her. The Jade Lake Fairy's eyes flashed with malicious light. She brandished her long sleeves and flew towards that direction. Speaking of Nangong Luyun, when he saw Su Luo's silhouette once again, at that instant, he experienced a change like going from heaven to hell. His Luo girl was really all right. She stood there with her entire body unharmed. At first, he was ecstatic, but almost at the same time, his heart dropped back down into hell again. This was because from a long distance away, he saw an arrow containing the inexhaustible power of heaven and earth tearing through space, flying ruthlessly towards Su Luo's heart. The arrow approached with the momentum of a torrential rush, extremely accurate and impossible to avoid. The person who shot the arrow had at least the strength of a 5th rank. In a split second, Nangong Liuyun's heart almost leaped out of his throat. Both of his eyes started to smolder like a red-hot flat iron. The temples on both sides of his head violently throbbed. His complexion hazed over with an oppressiveness that was on the fringe of almost devouring people. He was simply too far away. Basically, the water from afar that couldn't be used to quench the fire. Fortunately, at the last second, a black-robed killer saw the threat, and without the slightest hesitation, he stood ramrod straight in front of Su Luo to shield her. Only now did Nangong Luyun relax his breath, but abruptly, he felt the accumulated power of heaven and earth coming from that darting arrow. He had a very bad feeling. Sure enough, that flying arrow actually went through the black-robed killer's body, piercing through like hot knife through butter. It then proceeded towards Su Luo's heart again. What was freakishly strange was that the speed and strength of the arrow was unabated. Nangong Liuyun's facial muscles violently fluctuated up and down. There was a frighteningly bleak expression on his face. Su Luo's view was blocked by the black-robed man. His back was also very close to her. Therefore, she did not discover the still approaching arrow. When she found out, it was already too late to evade it. The arrow darted with extraordinary sharpness, with the sound whistling through the wind, thrusting firmly towards Su Luo's heart. However, when it was a handwidth, too, away from Su Luo's heart, all of a sudden, something unimaginable and unbelievable occurred, leading to a huge reversal. Just when everyone was about to witness Su Luo meeting a tragic and a huge occurrence took place. Chapter 110, Life and Death at Stake. 3. A deranged, malicious light flashed within the eyes of the Jade Lake's fairy. Everyone could only stare as the puppy covered in pure snow-white fur sitting on Su Luo's shoulder, playing with her finger casually extended a little paw. And it effortlessly, firmly caught that bizarre changing arrow. It should be said that this arrow contained the might of heaven and earth. Its strength was so great that it would pass through a body without losing momentum. Even Su Luo would not be able to avoid it. However, this type of arrow was actually caught by a puppy. Furthermore, he had grabbed it so effortlessly, making it seem as if he casually caught the arrow in passing. What kind of a situation was this? Practically everyone present had their eyes wide open in disbelief. They were all dumbstruck, stupidly staring at little Ming Ming without blinking. Little Ming Ming's action could be said to have made everyone's jaw drop. With a pair of large misty eyes, Meng Meng adorably sat on top of Su Luo's shoulder. His two little legs were crossed with his two little paws holding the arrow on both ends. Like eating a stalk of sugar cane, crunch, 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 bite after bite, he gnawed on the arrow as if it was incredibly delicious. Momentarily, everyone was stunned and in shock. That arrow had been made from extracted ancient black iron ore. It was classified as a top-grade weapon, incomparably hard and durable. Ordinary swords were simply incapable of even scratching it. However, this puppy, he had almost completely gnawed through all of it. Furthermore, he was chewing with such delight, as if it was the most delicious food in the world. At this point, other than feeling that it was hard to believe what was happening in front of their eyes, the people present could only remain speechless. What kind of teeth were those? Chewing so hard that crunch, crunch sounds resulted? Even just watching this scene made their teeth feel sore on the puppy's behalf. It was only at this moment that little Meng Meng noticed that he had become the focus of everyone's attention. Meng Meng was still holding the half-eaten arrow in his paws and had a mouthful of iron that had yet to be swallowed. With such a ridiculous appearance, he returned everyone's gaze. Suddenly, Meng Meng seemed to have come to his senses. He quickly discarded the arrow and very bashfully threw himself into Su Luo's arms. Meng Meng covered his little face with his two little paws and very shyly tucked himself into her embrace. Su Luo felt the corner of her mouth twitch as 3 black lines appeared on her forehead. She had a strong urge to grab the little guy's ear and scold him. "Please, where is your domineering attitude? Why don't you display some of that legendary dragon race's autocratic demeanor? Even though your dragon father changed your outer appearance to that of a puppy, but inside you are still a dragon, okay? Furthermore, in your veins runs the blood of the mighty and awe-inspiring divine dragon. How can you give off such a bashful manner? You are destroying the dignity of your dragon race, don't you think?" Su Luo, with 3 black lines on her forehead, speechlessly patted the little thing that was squirming around in her embrace. Why did she suddenly have the feeling that she had become a mother? Would this end well? While Su Luo and little Meng Meng were having their silent exchange, Nangong Luyun had already taken large strides to stand in front of Su Luo. Su Luo looked at Nangong Luyun, and the corner of her mouth slowly curved up into an ironic smile. Without any hesitation, she turned around and walked away. However, not allowing Su Luo to take a single step, Nangong Luyun's figure flashed and quick as lightning seized her wrist. His hand was as cold as ice. Su Luo started to fiercely struggle free. However, no matter how hard she struggled, Nangong Luyun's hold was like an iron clamp, rock-firm and unyielding. She was completely unable to shake it off. In contrast, Nangong Luyun only stared attentively at Su Luo. His pearly eyes were as deep and pitch-black as a lake. Centimeter by centimeter, he scanned Su Luo all over, looking at every pore on her body in an extremely careful and serious manner. Su Luo returned his gaze, looking into those beautiful pupils that were as dark as an abyss containing a very complicated expression in its depths. She didn't understand his actions, nor did she want to understand. Suddenly, the cold, placid look in Nangong Luyun's eyes turned into a tempest, releasing a fierce, frosty light. Glaring at her, he furiously said, "Where did you run off to for an entire day and night? Didn't I tell you not to leave? Why didn't you remain at the original place and wait for me?" Chapter 111. A Bitter Kiss. 1. Day and night. Despite being constantly hunted down, constantly escaping and facing several dangerous, life-or-death situations, Su Luo had never felt depressed. But when faced with Nangong Luyun's repeated interrogation, the softest spots near her heart suddenly throbbed with pain. It was a faint, gradual, and dull pain. Su Luo's unwavering and experienced well-like eyes gazed back at Nangong Luyun, lightly and dimly. The corners of her lips lifted into a breezy smile, indifferently spitting out 2 words, "Let go." Nangong Luyun grip-locked onto Su Luo's hand. Not only did he not let up, his grip tightened even more. Ink-black eyes stared with an overbearingly imposing, chilly vigor. There was also a faint wavering emotion that Su Luo could not read. In the end, it was still Su Luo who conceded first. Her nose twitched slightly, and taking a deep breath, she batted her jet-black eyelashes insincerely at Nangong Luyun. "Your Highness Prince Jean, I'm very sorry for having troubled you. But please don't worry, Su Luo will not be troubling you again in the future." Su Luo worked hard to restrain her turbulent emotions. Her tone was steady and unwavering, and her beautiful eyes held a hint of sarcasm. He was always telling her that he would treat her well, but upon meeting his childhood sweetheart, was she not still immediately discarded? However beautiful the promise, in the end it was only like this. Su Luo, in the end what are you feeling so sorrowful about? Was being hurt by Yun Qi in your previous life not enough? To actually be so naive as to hope that someone who would wholeheartedly treat you well? How laughable. Nangong Luyun quietly watched as Su Luo deliberately distanced herself from him. His expression grew terrifyingly somber, as if he was holding back an invisible anger. However, when he observed her closely, he saw her almost hysterical self-deprecating laugh that made it seem that she was simultaneously crying and laughing. His red lips parted a little as his eyes grew deeply frightening. In the end, his Adam's apple moved a bit, and he gazed deeply at Su Luo with a frown. "How come you couldn't make others worry less? If anything were to happen to you, how will this king be able to explain this to your Su manor?" Su Luo remained where she was, as refined as an ancient Greek sculpture. She emitted a subtle chill from her whole body. She lifted her gaze towards Nangong Luyun, coldly smilingly with veiled ridicule. "Doesn't your Highness Prince Jean not know about the situation in Su Manor? If something happened to me, wouldn't it be really advantageous to certain people? They wouldn't have been able to thank you fast enough for it. So how could they even blame you?" Nangong Luyun gazed deeply at Su Luo. His lips parted and closed slightly as a solemn, suffocating atmosphere surrounded them in their silence. Chapter 112, A Bitter Kiss, 2. What kind of relationship did they have? What made Nangong Luyun think that he could do whatever he wanted with her? Her heart bursting with fury, Su Luo heavily stomped on Nangong Luyun's foot. Nangong Luyun smothered a grunt, and his arms encircling her tightened even more. His lips sucked and nibbled hers. Nangong Luyun continued kissing Su Luo, unmoved by the pain. Su Luo was so infuriated. She bit him in retaliation. Scarlet droplets of blood dripped from his lips. The blood erotically dropped from his thin lips to land on her petal-like ones. She could taste the scorching heat from the passionate emotions contained within that blood. There were also some hard-to-describe feelings. They separated slightly. Nangong Luyun's phoenix eyes that were serene with hidden depths narrowed dangerously. They were fixated on her. Su Luo coldly widened her own pair of eyes and, refusing to back down, confronted the clearly cold and cruel expression within the depths of Nangong Luyun's eyes directly. Two pairs of eyes looked at each other, wordless and unspeaking. Suddenly, like an eagle swooping down from up high, Nangong Luyun vigorously and commandingly held the back of Su Luo's head, using a large, slender hand to forcefully lift up her chin. He leaned down and forcefully kissed her. His hot tongue ardently invaded her mouth, frantically wreaking havoc, causing the blood to mix and spread within her mouth. The metallic and sweet flavor overwhelmed Su Luo's senses. It was as if Nangong Luyun wanted to use the blood to leave proof of his existence inside her. It also seemed to convey some kind of oath and affidavit of ownership. His actions were domineering and thoughtless. He kissed her with adamant intensity. When Su Luo was finally able to liberate her lips, lacking oxygen, she gasped for air using deep breaths. Her cheeks were scarlet. Su Luo felt as if the air she was breathing carried a scalding temperature that was abnormally hot. Nangong Luyun's fine, bony hand lifted Su Luo's white jade-like chin. His deep eyes were blurred and carried a trace dejection. "Luo girl, never think about trying to leave this king. Even you won't be able to withstand the consequences of such an action." The corners of Su Luo's mouth rose into a slight smile. "Leave you? Please enlighten me. Your Highness Prince Jean, when did we get together? Her dark eyes were obstinate and unconcerned, as if the kiss just now never happened, leaving her unaffected. She was still strongly resisting him and wouldn't even acknowledge the relationship between them. This point made Nangong Luyun especially incensed. Nangong Luyun's complexion hazed over. His eyes were menacing, as if he wanted to swallow her whole. He used even more strength to grasp Su Luo's hand. However, Su Luo's expression remained unchanged. Pain. You were injured. A caring expression flashed through Nangong Luyun's cold, star-like eyes. He hurriedly released Su Luo. Nangong Luyun finally noticed that Su Luo's hands had been forcefully bound before, leaving several traces of bruising. The bruises were quite deep, as if the binding had embedded into her flesh. In addition, both her face and body disclosed line after line of lacerations. These injuries were sufficient to illustrate that within the past day and night, Su Luo had spent the time facing various dangers. Who was it? Nangong Luyun's icy, cruel eyes that easily captivated people were permeated with an intense rage. These injuries were clearly man-made and not the work of magical beasts. The fury on his face increased, issuing forth a strong aura of death. His entire person immediately gave off a ruthless, bloodthirsty air like the alluring, cold-blooded azura shrouded with the darkness of the night. He was so furious. Was he really concerned about her? Su Luo's beautiful eyes gave off lights that were like the restless tossing of watery waves, cleverly revolving. Should she take a risk and bet on it? It was. Su Luo was thinking about telling the truth when she saw the Jade Lake's fairy soundlessly appear behind Nangong Luyun. The Jade Lake's fairy was still as devastatingly beautiful as before. She was clothed in a white dress, the color as pure and holy as snow. The hem of the dress lightly danced with the wind. The Jade Lake's fairy stood there, showing a strong presence. With misty eyes that were like liquid fog, she clearly and calmly looked at Su Luo. Her elegant and extremely beautiful complexion revealed lips pursed in a flowing, shallow smile. Chapter 113, A Bitter Kiss, 3. She looked at Su Luo, and though her smile was broad and her voice clear as she spoke, she still chided Nangong Luyun, third senior brother. Miss Su has yet to heal her injuries. It's better to release her first, and let me take care of the rest. Nangong Luyun's star-like eyes held a touch of tenderness, elegant clarity, and gentle kindness as he nodded and replied, Yao Yao is right. It was this king who was too impatient. Yet, despite having said so, his hold on Su Luo's hand did not loosen. Jade Lake's fairy was like a cold star that stared at those tight, interwoven hands in front of her. A cold light flashed within her lovely eyes. Her simple and neat complexion blossomed with a faint smile. Oh, right. Did Miss Su see any of my maids along the way? Su Luo looked at her with a smile full of undisguised mockery. Jade Lake's fairy tactic of making the first move, trying to trap her with this dilemma, was very clever. If she admitted that she had seen those maids, then, where were they now? Why did they not appear together with Su Luo? If she did not admit to seeing them, then, when there was enough evidence to prove that she killed those maids, how would she be able to defend her stance? Those few words were akin to placing Su Luo on a burning grill while Jade Lake's fairy, this perpetuator of malicious acts, was simply speculating on the side as she leisurely sipped tea. Su Luo's heart grew vigilant. This Jade Lake's fairy before her not only had extraordinary looks, her shrewdness and scheming was also by no means average. Otherwise, why would Nangong Luyun trust her so, or give her preferential treatment? According to Chuiyu, the Jade Lake's fairy had dispatched a total of 4 maids. The first 3 had all died in front of Su Luo. As for the last person, she should be the archer, but Su Luo didn't know what had happened to her. However, before Su Luo could respond, suddenly, a black-robed shadow appeared in front of Nangong Luyun. He reverently and respectfully reporting to Master, we found a suspect within the depression on a mountain not far from here. He was carrying this longbow. The black-robed killer stood with his eyes downcast. He deferentially offered the longbow to Nangong Luyun with both hands. This was an exquisitely handcrafted upper-grade curved bow. The bow was glowing with a faint luster. One glance, and you could tell that it was of considerable value. Detain him and bring him here. Nangong Liuyun's entire body exuded a strong, imposing, august aura. The depth of his eyes broke out in rage, suffused with evil demonic radiance. His whole person had the appearance of a bloodthirsty monster, savagely cruel and cold. Once she saw the person lying down on the ground with eyes tightly shut, Su Luo's eyes slightly creased. This person turned out to be Lu Weiming. How could it be him? Su Luo looked towards Jade Lake's fairy with a smile that was not a smile, while the other side merely returned her look with a soft, sweet-tempered, smiling expression. It was as if she was saying that she, the Jade Lake's fairy, was completely unaware of the situation regarding the matter of hunting her down, and it was not her doing. Dead? Nangong Liuyun's pair of icy eyes, the depths of which mesmerized people, radiated a dense killing intent. Yes, by the time we found him, he was already dead. The black-robed person deferentially responded. Nangong Liuyun stroked the longbow, probing for traces of the owner. He confirmed that the killer definitely used this bow to kill people, but what could his motive have been to kill her? Nangong Liuyun had a ferocious appearance, solemn and bloodthirsty. Qin Ning, who had silently appeared by the Jade Lake Fairy's side, suddenly interjected. This servant once heard Miss Lu say that they had chased Miss Su to kill her. Miss Su, was this true? Wasn't this implying that only Su Luo would know the motive of why Lu Weiming would want to kill her? Chapter 114. A Bitter Kiss. 4. Su Luo gazed at Qin Ning. A grim smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. The maid at Jade Lake Fairy's side was also not so simple. Were they hunting you? Nangong Liuyun's dark eyes became increasingly malicious. His entire person seemed arrogant and aloof, emitting a dense, majestic aura. Su Luo's smile was helpless and stark. They were not the only group of people that was hunting me. What Su Luo just said had a double meaning. She raised an eyebrow and looked at the Jade Lake's fairy with a smile that was not quite a smile. Her gaze landed on the fairy's white, pointed, and extremely clever hands. That final arrow with world-shaking force, could it really have not left a single trace on those pretty hands that were occupied with schemes? Within just this one day and night, it could be said that she had been surrounded by perils. If it weren't for the goddess of fortune standing on her side, she would have died 18,000 times by now. Today's hatred from being hunted, in the future, she, Su Luo, would absolutely return it tenfold. At this time, the Jade Lake's fairy had a warm, soft, and genial smile on her face. That smile was tranquil and serene, lacking even a ripple on the surface, a large body of water, as if she was a fairy from the heavenly realm. Nangong Liuyun's beautiful icy eyes had a ruthless and savage light. It gazed deeply at Su Luo. Stressing each word he asked, "Who else were among the people trying to kill you?" Nangong Liuyun, this was what you demanded. It was not something I had voluntarily tattletaled. If I were to say that the Jade Lake Fairy's people were also among them, would you believe me? Su Luo employed a relaxed and mocking tone, while staring at him with a smile that was not quite a smile. However, an earnest and cautious expression very quickly passed through Su Luo's eyes. If Nangong Liuyun believed her, then she would decide not to conceal the truth from him. She would reveal everything to him and tell him that his Jade Lake's fairy was a snake with a scorpion's vicious poison. If Nangong Liuyun did not believe her, Su Luo bleakly forced a bitter smile. An icy light swiftly flitted through Nangong Liuyun's hawk-like eyes. He rubbed her head, that pair of red phoenix eyes becoming even more joyous and demonically alluring as they gazed at her. With an indulgent and spoiling manner, he said, "Do not joke around. You must tell this king the truth." In a split second, Su Luo's heart immediately dropped to the bottom. It was so cold as to reach the freezing point. Sure enough, she had expected too much. As expected, how could a few short days of association compete with the mutual trust developed from growing up together since childhood? The Jade Lake's fairy used a sweet-tempered smile to look at her. That pair of sparkling and translucent, jade-like beautiful eyes had a self-satisfied, boastful, gloating laugh in their depths. As if to say to Su Luo, "So what if I dispatched people to kill you?" Nangong Luyun doesn't believe you. He absolutely won't believe it. Yes, he did not believe it. Su Luo's mouth raised with a hint of irony. She forcefully pushed Nangong Luyun away. In a very light tone and low volume said, "I'm tired. I want to rest." Now, what was the point of saying even more? Anyhow, he believed in the Jade Lakes Fairy without any doubt. Nangong Luyun saw that she was in a bad mood. He thought it was because she was tired from this one day and night away. So he followed her wish and gently said, "Okay, we'll rest for one night here and do our task tomorrow." "No need." Su Luo coldly refused. The task he was referring to was slaughtering an armored back dragon. Since her space was already opened, there was no need go and kill a dragon. Believe in this king. This king will definitely find the culprit. Nangong Luyun watched her back as she determinedly walked away. His sharp eyebrows were low. His voice was firm as if swearing an oath. Su Luo's mouth rose with a slight bitterness. "Find the killer? I had even told you who it was, yet you won't believe me. How will you find the killer then?" Su Luo's footsteps paused. She glanced back with a shallow smile. Her smile was like that of March's fireworks, dazzling and lonely. In a clear and indifferent voice, she said, "Really? Then I'll first thank you." Nangong Luyun firmly watched her leaving figure from the back. His face was indeterminately flickering between clear and overcast, suddenly dark then bright. The veins of his knuckles tightened until they burst. "Third senior brother." The Jade Lake Fairy's charmingly gentle and beautiful eyes were like mist moving slightly. She somewhat hesitantly stared at Nangong Luyun. "Do you believe me?" Her lips were exceptionally beautiful. They were light in color, moist and plump, evoking the phrase, "suitable to be kissed." Nangong Luyun leaned down. His beautiful, perfect, and thin lips kissed Su Luo's lightly colored lips. But Su Luo firmly pushed him away. "Are you still blaming this king?" Nangong Luyun asked in a low voice, his scorching gaze fixated on her. Su Luo was wordlessly silent. "Angry at this king for abandoning you that day?" Nangong Luyun's voice was clearly cold. Su Luo remained silent. Within the carriage, there was a period of silence. After what seemed to be a long time, Nangong Luyun delivered some words in explanation. She and this king grew up together. She saved this king's life once. There are some matters that you don't understand and are unlikely to understand. Su Luo opened her eyes and shot him an offhand glance. All of a sudden, the corner of her mouth hooked into a taunting smile, and she asked in a contrary manner, "Right? How could I blame you?" What Nangong Luyun intended to say was choked off by her words. A look of astonishment containing complicated feelings flashed across his eyes. This prompted him to return to his frequent habit of staring at Su Luo. Su Luo lifted her eyebrows, giving him a smile that was not a smile. "What qualifications do I have to blame you? Like you said, the two of you have been together since childhood. You are childhood sweethearts with mutual trust. You have saved each other's lives. We are only strangers who came together by chance and have between us a few short days of friendship. Therefore, how could I blame you?" Chapter 116. Infuriated to the point of discarding all rational thoughts, 2. In a split second, Nangong Luyun's complexion became exceptionally unsightly. His 10 fingers were intercrossed together. Entire body was icy cold and bloodthirsty. He was seething with anger. Could it be what I said was wrong? Su Luo heedlessly watched him. The corner of her mouth perked up in a light, nonchalant smile. "You guys are childhood sweethearts, while we are merely nodding acquaintances. It's obvious which is important and which is not with just a glance. How could it be wrong that you elected to save her? If I were you, I would choose to save her too." "Acquaintances?" Nangong Luyun's phoenix eyes narrowed. "Or are we not even considered acquaintances?" Su Luo seemed to be infuriating him for her own enjoyment. Nangong Liuyun's rage burned up, his face became grim. His long and thin fingers pinched at her neck even though his smile was tender and soft as water. 1. His single-minded, devoted expression was simply touching. Su Luo, do you believe that this king will put you to death? The man leaning over was like Satan and could make one's heart full of fearful thoughts. However, Su Luo knew she could not yield. Once she gives in, it would be like being submerged in an endless abyss. She would completely lose herself. Su Luo stubbornly met his eyes head-on. The corner of her mouth rose and a vague, flowery, smiling countenance appeared. Just because I refused you, was that the reason you want to put me to death? His Highness the legendary Prince Jin still amounts to nothing more than this. Luo, you better not challenge the bottom line of this king's patience. Nangong Luyun bent one knee, semi-kneeling, leaning into her. Tenderness, dizziness, and puzzlement in a blink of an eye. Those emotions passed through the eyes fixed on her. That kind of consequence is not something you will be able to bear. Really? What type of consequences? I really would want to try it. She confronted Nangong Liuyun's tender and soft as water expression that concealed a vengeful bloodthirstiness. A touch of fear passed through Su Luo's heart. Nevertheless, she unhesitantly counterattacked. Su Luo, don't tell me you don't know. This king had already decided that Prince Jin's wife and princess is you. I will never let you go. As if Nangong Luyun was making a vow, his beautiful eyes were tender and soft as water. A gorgeous smile on his face, his voice was gentle and soft like a feather floating by. Therefore, don't try to refuse or even flee, or you can only get hurt. Haha, really funny. Su Luo focused on his gaze, as if wanting to know how he will hurt her. Nangong Liuyun's authority had suffered a provocating blow, yet he laughed in a matchless, gorgeous manner. He was at the pinnacle of pure, sinister darkness from the moment he met her. He never intended to set her free. This was a type of obsession. He had an obsession and the formidable capital to carry out his desires. He even started to consider, if he should, in order to keep her by his side, break off her wings or join in helping her soar higher with her talent. A choice at this point, with no foreseeable outcome. Right now, she could only see that his face and everything else was being turned upside down as quickly as lightning. He cruelly bit her lip. This time's Nangong Luyun seemed to be possessed by the soul of a devil, remote and wildly ruthless. He fiercely dug open her teeth, and violently laid siege to the gap between her lips and teeth, too, arousing the strong passions like those experienced during a perilous situation. Su Luo had no time to react before being assaulted. Once she came to her senses, she discovered that he had an iron grip on the back of her head, and her entire body was covered by his. She couldn't move the slightest bit. This was too much. What gives him the right to do whatever he pleases with her? Obviously the one who abandoned her was him. Clearly he chose to believe his childhood sweetheart. Now what reason does he have to show off such love towards her and pressured her so she can't reject it? If Su Luo was a regular woman, then fine, but she definitely wasn't. In her past life, she was a famous gold medal level assassin. She dealt with the underground dark world all year round. The words being wronged and bullied cannot possibly exist when talking about her. 1. Tender and soft as water. Chinese idiom for deeply attached to someone. 2. Lips and teeth. Chinese idiom with figurative meaning of close partners or interdependent. Chapter 117. Infuriated to the point of discarding all rational thoughts. 3. Fury flashed through Su Luo's heart. She swung a fist containing all the power in her body and smashed it with as much force as she could toward Nangong Liuyun's 5 viscera and 6 bowels. 1. This fist contained all her strength. Nangong Luyun let out a groan and suddenly loosened his grip. Su Luo's face was full of indignation and fury, so she did not carefully look at him. She ruthlessly pushed him away. She turned around, lifted the curtain, and jumped out of the carriage in a rage. His horse carriage was not the only one on the road back to the capital. Even if it was the only one, she, Su Luo, would rather use her own pair of legs to walk back. She would definitely not trouble him again. Panting with rage, Su Luo turned on her heels and walked away. She had not noticed the peculiarity of Nangong Liuyun's appearance then. After being pushed aside, Nangong Liuyun hit the carriage wall, and his complexion became as pale as paper. His right hand was pressed to his chest. His smooth and slender fingers could not stop trembling. "Luo, Luo," he opened the carriage curtains and sickly called out. Su Luo did not even bother to turn her head. Her back was cold and determined. Suddenly, she heard the sound of a heavy weight fall to the ground behind her, along with Ling Feng's anxious cry. Su Luo stopped her footsteps, thought about it, and ultimately decided to glance back. Just one look made her deeply purse her brows. She unexpectedly saw the godlike Nangong Liuyun's entirely battered and exhausted body tumble to the ground. On his white brocade robe, his chest area was full stained with fresh blood. His originally handsomely sculpted, tall and straight body now seemed extremely weak, like glass that would shatter with one touch. His former dark red lips were tainted with blood. It was devilishly alluring and wildly untamed. Now with difficulty he propped himself up, a pair of beautiful eyes dim as frost. Even though he was pale and weak, he stared deeply at Su Luo with a demonically charming expression. His pair of eyes were fixed straight at Su Luo since the beginning, and he remained silent, not speaking a word. His pitch-black inky eyes held a deep meaning, making Su Luo's heart throb incessantly. Nangong Liuyun, what is wrong with him? How did he suddenly become so weak? Su Luo looked at her own pair of hands with a confounded expression. Right now, she shouldn't be strong enough to hit Nangong Liuyun until he spit out blood, right? Suddenly, Nangong Liuyun's entire body seemed to be possessed by a litany of evil, vampiric spirits. Cold sweat poured from his face. His complexion immediately became deathly pale. His entire body began to shake and tremble. His scarlet, snowy lips instantly became purple and bruised. He grinded his teeth and tightly shut his mouth as if unable to suppress a large power was about to surge out. Not good. His Highness is about to go into recoil of madness, too. As His Highness Prince Jin's personal bodyguard, Ling Feng was so terrified that his hands and foot had gone soft. His Highness Prince Jin was someone they all worshipped and believed in. If he lives, then the Tiger Wolf Regiment lives. He dies, then the Tiger Wolf Regiment would be exterminated. Therefore, nothing must happen to High Highness Prince Jin. Ling Feng's complexion fluctuated. One moment it was pale, and another it was ashen. He looked back and fiercely glared at Su Luo and sternly said, "His Highness is about to enter recoil of madness. Quickly come back and help." This woman, she actually hit His Highness until he was about to enter recoil of madness. Right now Ling Feng was itching to kill Su Luo with one palm strike. A touch of confusion appeared in Su Luo's eyes. How could she have the strength to hit Nangong Liuyun into recoil of madness? How powerful was Nangong Liuyun's strength compared to how powerful her strength was? This person was speaking nonsense. Seeing Su Luo's disbelief, Ling Feng was about to die from anger. He loudly shouted at Su Luo. Because His Highness wanted to save you, he broke protocol and sent the signal to summon the Tiger Wolf Regiment to come. Because His Highness wanted to see you earlier, originally he could have break through and advanced another rank. But by forcibly stopping the process, he maimed his own body to the point where his 5 viscera and 6 bowls were nearly dislocated. Not to mention His Highness's battle with the Vulture King, where his internal injury was so heavy that he almost died from the wounds. Chapter 118. Infuriated to the point of discarding all rational thoughts. 4. Ling Feng's pair of eyes were red with rage. It was as if he wanted to swallow Su Luo whole. He pointed at Su Luo and loudly snarled. His Highness, in order to not make you anxious, continuously pretended that nothing was wrong with him. You, however, you actually returned all his good intentions with such a heavy blow. I really don't understand why His Highness would love such a malicious woman. Su Luo was dazed by Ling Feng's denunciation. She blankly stared at Ling Feng, Every sentence and every word that he said whirled around in her mind. Nangong Luyun in that battle had unexpectedly suffered a serious injury. Furthermore, in order to save her, he had repeatedly sustained even more injuries? How could this be? Ling Feng's bloodshot eyes quickly glared at Su Luo. His hands wiped away the liquid that had squeezed out of his eyes. Blaff, Nangong Luyun could not suppress it anymore, and a mouthful of blood wildly sprayed out. Su Luo was terrified to the point of becoming paralyzed. She quickly walked forward, and with one knee bent kneeled in front of him. An apprehensive panic that never appeared before flashed through her eyes. What to do? What should we do? Su Luo gazed at Nangong Luyun's chest. That area was blooming like a red spider lily. The pretty and flirtatious red color was spreading. It rapidly saturated the white brocade robe, leaving a dark pattern. Scarlet liquid drop by drop fell from his lightly colored thin lips in quick succession. The vicious, dense blood on his chest saturated the air. The smell of blood immediately assaulted her nose as it engulfed his entire body. However, Nangong Luyun seemed to be completely unaware of the pain. His eyes were diluted like the mist. A smiling expression was hanging from the corner of his mouth. Within Nangong Luyun's black eyes was an endless, deep abyss. His entire body gave off a flirtatious and enticing manner that was strangely pessimistic and full of despair at the same time. He carried a strong air of self-abandonment and self-destructiveness while still being incomparably handsome. Nangong Luyun's current state terrified and alarmed Su Luo, but it also made her heart beat faster. The rims of Su Luo's eyes gradually become moist. How could this have happened? This was not what she wanted. Su Luo had never thought that she could injure Nangong Luyun so severely. She had been enraged when she had smashed him with her fist. She had never imagined that he could be wounded so profoundly. Su Luo's eyes misted over, and she repeatedly shook her head. She wanted to tell him that she had not done it on purpose. In a moment of rage, she had spoken irresponsibly and hit him. In the future, she wouldn't dare to do it again. Unexpectedly, Nangong Luyun dropped down on one knee and kneeled in front of Su Luo. He wrapped his hands tightly around hers. Because he was doing his best to ignore the pain, the blue veins on the back of Nangong Luyun's smooth white hands popped out. His hands trembled faintly. Nangong Luyun was quite unaware of how scary his current appearance was. His pair of beautiful and flirtatious eyes gazed at Su Luo in a tender and soft manner. He started to smile even though he lacked body heat. Nangong Luyun's demeanor sent a message that even if the entire world collapsed in front of him in the next second, he would not even furrow an eyebrow. He determinedly and gently looked at Su Luo. "This is your last chance, Luo Luo. If you stay, from now on you will never be able to leave." Su Luo could only shake her head. She wanted to apologize. She wanted to say "I'm sorry," but it was as if her throat had been pinched closed. No matter how she tried, she could not make a sound. "Have you completely vented your anger?" Nangong Luyun's smile was very light. It resembled the clouds on the horizon, unattainable and out of reach. Not waiting for Su Luo to answer, Nangong Luyun once again started to speak. "In the event that your heart is still incensed, I will give you another opportunity." From his sleeves, he unexpectedly took out a dagger. He stuffed it into Su Luo's hand and determinedly looked at her. Ling Feng was immediately scared out of his mind. "Your Highness, that dagger could kill with a single blow. In addition, it was coated with a highly toxic poison. With just a slight touch on skin, a rot will spread through the entire body. Anyone affected would be entirely beyond saving. Who allowed you to speak?" Scram. Nangong Luyun had always treated other people without the slightest restraint, his behavior always oppressive and unpredictable. In a split second, it seemed as if time froze. Regarding His Highness Prince Jin, Ling Feng was already accustomed to following his orders. Prince Jin's every word, sentence, and action had already been ingrained as orders in the minds of his followers since long ago, to the point that complying without question had become a reflex. Chapter 119. infuriated to the point of discarding all rational thoughts. 5. To comply with him, to obey him. It seemed to have already become intuitive. An instinct, so natural that it seemed to have been carved into one's flesh and blood. To resist His Highness Prince Jin required a great deal of courage. Ling Feng bit his lip. Furious, he closed his mouth and stood aside. Since ancient times, beautiful women have been the source of numerous calamities. The ancients were right in this regard. They didn't deceive me. Lin Feng's eyes were bloodshot, and both of his hands were clenched into fists. With his eyes as cold as ice, he heartlessly stared at Su Luo. Nangong Luyun stuffed the dagger into Su Luo's hand. His laugh, which was like a soft cloud and a gentle wind in the clear sky, it was also flirtatious and threatening. His finger pointed at his own chest, and he softly coaxed her. Come, stab here. Stabbing here will let you vent your anger. Be obedient. His facial expression was unperturbed and lacked any emotion. His hands unyieldingly detained Su Luo's hand, not allowing any room for resistance. Su Luo was both scared and angry, and involuntarily cried out, Nangong Luyun, enough? Seriously, enough. Quickly stay your hands. Nangong Luyun, with a deathly tight grip, held her hand. The corner of his mouth rose as he laughed in a flirtatious and enticing manner, tranquil and intoxicating like the cherry blossoms in March. He wouldn't let her refuse. Gripping the wrist of her hand that held the dagger, the blade tip was directed towards his own heart. You know, when I, Nangong Luyun, do things, there has never been a person who would dare utter half a sentence of criticism, and I have also never cared about other people's opinions. However, you, Su Luo, are an exception. Nangong gripped her hand securely. His eyes gave off an ice-cold aura. You can retaliate. Come, vent your anger. Nangong Luyun's pitch-black eyes stared at her, looking deep into her eyes. He took her hands, with the dagger blade tip aimed towards his own heart, and positioned it at the most fatal point. No matter how high your martial skill was, the heart was always the most fatal location. With one knife stab at it, even the most powerful martial arts expert will die. He tightly clutched her hand. His demeanor was calm, his expression blank, drawing nearer bit by bit. He was very overbearing, forcing her to kill him. Su Luo repeatedly shook her head, and she did everything to pry away her hands from his hold. She was mouthing, I'm sorry that I treated you badly, I'm sorry. Su Luo's heart repeated these I'm sorry's 10,000 times, but she was unable to speak a single word. However, Nangong Luyun turned a deaf ear and just laughed indifferently. His smile was like the fireworks in March, gorgeous yet lonely.